All right, everybody. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but we are just about to get today's live video retrospective underway. This is It's the Goose, It's the Goose. Today we are going to be doing The Iron Giant. And for those of you who have seen it, you know what a classic it is. And I'm going to make sure that we just have everything up running here and running smoothly. So if you folks out there can just go ahead and give me if you can just go ahead and give me a nod that you can hear me, that would be greatly appreciated. Just make sure the audio is up and that everything is running smoothly. Let's go ahead and make sure that we're all here, we're all happy, and that we're going to have a really good stream today. Yes, I did, Joey Baseball. I did take a lot of screenshots. Thank you for noticing. So still just putting the last bit together, had some technical difficulties. So I'm going to go ahead and just finish some of that up right now. But we're going to wait about 15-20 minutes to let people get in. We'll just talk about the channel, just some of the other things that are going on here. So if anybody wants to tell me, and I actually put this up here, if it's going to go ahead and when did you first see the Iron Giant? I am very curious as to everybody's answers here, because I remember seeing it originally probably someplace in like Cartoon Network. I definitely didn't see it. Um, I definitely didn't see it when it came out in theaters. I at least don't believe I did. Um, but I remember seeing it on Cartoon Network all the time. That was a really popular one. That was one that everybody had seen on Cartoon Network. And it was I remember it playing all the time. It was so much fun. Um, let's see, Joey Baseball. I saw it in 1999 because I'm an aging 90s baby. Unless you were just born today or born yesterday, unfortunately, I think we're all aging 70s, 80s, 90s, even 2000s babies. Even 2000s babies, which is scary to think of. But if anybody else is here also, when did you first see the Iron Giant? And I'm actually surprised at the comeback that the Iron Giant has had. Maybe not in a major way, not in a way that it's actually gotten a sequel. I don't know if we ever will get a sequel to it. I honestly don't believe that's the case because I think there would just have to be too many moving parts. But I could definitely see it. I'm afraid of it getting ruined though. I'd honestly be afraid of it not maybe not having that same impact. Like if they made an Iron Giant sequel today, and for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, I'm not going to give anything away, really. Um, but I would just be afraid of it because here's what you could do. I mean, I won't say what we can do. Maybe we'll discuss that at the end, but we'll go ahead and keep it on track. When did you first see the Iron Giant? We have Soul. I rented it on VHS when it originally released. Yeah, I remember. I remember a lot of people. This was a favorite that friends would have on VHS or DVD. Um, this one was always there, but for some reason, I don't know if it was just not very popular because I don't know anybody or remember anyone who saw it in theaters, and it's been released subsequently in theaters plenty of times since. But I don't know anybody who really saw it in theaters or went out to see it. So it's just had this sort of weird. I mean, look, you see movies have that second life, and this is if there's any movie, it's definitely this one that's had a second life upon home release. And in a really good way, in a way that I'm really happy about, because now when people talk about um, these movies, these classics, it's not just the ones that were limited to releases that were limited to theatrical releases, and this was, but this movie almost feels bigger because it was through word of mouth. Like I can't tell you how many times on YouTube I've seen people where they have first time reacting to seeing the Iron Giant. I'm finally seeing the Iron Giant, and it's cool to see people discover it, even adults, because it really is one of those movies that does have that really timeless appeal. And We'll get into more of it during the stream, but let me take a look. I Want My Slaw. I saw it in 1999. My mom got me the VHS at Pathmark, back when Pathmark sold movies. Yeah. So this is just kind of what I was alluding to, that not many people, I don't really know anybody who saw it in theaters. And that's not a problem at all. Um, but yeah, it just wasn't the kind of movie that I think people went to go see, because I'm going to look it up right now. Let me go ahead and see what animated movies came out in 1999. So let's take a look. We have, and I'm just looking here real quick. That was 1940. Let's see here, because I'm just curious. I know the only thing I can think of off the top of my head that's not even one. Okay, so we had The Iron Giant, Toy Story 2. Wow, that was, talk about a big year. Um, a big year for animation. South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. Tarzan, Fantasia 2000. Uh, Scooby Doo and the Witch's Ghost. Okay, so even just if you wanted to go with three or four of these, that's a pretty stacked year for animation. Toy Story 2, South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. Tarzan, which you can say I wouldn't describe as a hugely successful Disney movie, but definitely one that's like The Iron Giant, found sort of a new cult home on VHS and upon release. Um, Man, there's a lot of great movies that came out in 1999. Even if you just want to say three or four of the most popular, that's pretty great. I'd give that one. Let's take a look here. Joey Baseball, have you seen the Iron Giant documentary? It answers a lot of questions. I have not, and I would like to see that sometime. I wanted to actually have more information here. Unfortunately, things got a little hectic in life, and I wasn't able to do as much research as I wanted. But with these live video retrospectives, they're not all about research. They're mostly just going over just kind of the movie in general, and then some memories that I have and then that you folks have. Because it's really fun to make the normal videos, and I get to read the comments, but it is more fun when I can say, oh, I like this about the movie, and someone chimes in with a piece of trivia, or someone chimes in with a thought of their own. So it's always really cool to see. So I'm liking these live video retrospectives. We got a few more people. Let's see here. The Baka that Chews. I like that name. I saw it on Cartoon Network when they aired it for 24 hours. So that's how it looks like a couple of people have been seeing it, which I don't know that I saw it during the 24-hour one, but I do remember that it was plenty on Cartoon Network. And it feels like that's how most people saw it, at least most people right now. I actually saw it after when it came out on DVD. Loved it. Jeanette, yep, yeah. See, everybody, for some reason, it seems like everybody here has seen it on DVD, video, or Cartoon Network. If there's one person who saw it in theaters, who actually saw it in theaters, at this point, I'm going to be pretty impressed. Um, Joey Baseball, the Iron Giant was supposed to come out in 2000, but WB Animation was shutting down, so Brad Bird rushed to come out in 1999 because he feared the company was shut down by 2000, which it did. So that was a good move on his part. And it's too bad that it was shutting down, because I feel like this movie could have been massive. But I also feel like it might have been a little bit ahead of its time. I mean, the 3D animation still looks really good. The story, like I said earlier, definitely timeless. And just a really fun movie all around. Some things that I definitely didn't expect upon rewatching it, which make it make it feel like a blend of sort of the new school how animation decided to go with 3D animation as far as script writing and jokes, but also a lot of that old school where they weren't afraid to. I'm not going to say. I'm not going to say more adult jokes, but more things that are adult themed, which aren't a big deal because we've seen them in the past, but that have definitely been phased out of animation today. Special Needs Descendants fan, hi. Hello, Special Needs. Joey Baseball, Cartoon Network's 24-hour marathons made this movie popular. Totally agree. Special Needs, my brother and I watched it on Cartoon Network, watched a few years ago, and it was still good. Yes, and that's what I am happiest about, is I was not worried, but I was curious as to how it would hold up, because I'd seen it so many years ago, and it was just, this really good, fun movie. And I hadn't remembered um, really much about it other than the scenes that everybody has seen before. Um, and it turned out to be a really cool, great movie. So I'm just excited. I was just excited to revisit it and re-experience it, and was actually pretty ecstatic that it turned out as well as it did. Um, so yeah, I'm pretty happy about that. And let's see here. Um, Bird got his budget cut in half and got one third of the time most animated films at the time got. They told him, make it, work, or don't. And of course, Bird being who he is, he laughed and did it. And yeah, and Brad Bird uh, really is great. Um, he really is a talented director who, if you're not familiar with Brad Bird, he directed Ratatouille. He directed, I believe, The Incredibles 2 and The Incredibles. I mean, this guy, and of course, he directed The Iron Giant. So this guy, if there's one person who knows animation and who has had a more deserved run, it's it's Brad Bird. So Joey Baseball, they had initially planned a much bigger release for it, but the studio is going bankrupt, rushed it. They're going to have Burger King toys, bigger marketing push. Yep. And that's something that's unfortunate that happened. But you know what? I am at least happy that they got this out there. Say what you will about the toys not coming out or the marketing push, but the fact that we got a finished product, and maybe it's not to, the specifications he wanted, but I'm happy it's out there. I'm happy that we got the product we did. And if this is the product we got, hey, sometimes more time and more money doesn't always lead to something great. So for this to come out the way it did, happen the way it was supposed to happen, I suppose. Let me go ahead and get a couple things pulled up here. Having a little technical difficulties with the slideshow that you folks aren't privy to seeing right now, which is good. I'm happy about that, but there may be a couple little things missing towards the end, unfortunately, but we'll go ahead and make do with it. I also want to go ahead and point out one thing really quick while I'm getting this up.
This new KitchenAid dishwasher has over 50.
Go ahead and read a couple more comments while I get a couple things here, get them fixed. I want the budget for Giant was less than half than Disney's Tarzan, and they finished it a year earlier. Wow. Yeah, I mean, that was a competitive time for studios. I mean, the 90s were, I mean, think of everything that came out for Disney. I think it was between, I said this in one of my videos, it was between Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast. And I want to say Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and there was one more, a third one. I think it was The Lion King. Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and Lion King made over $1 billion in that time. And then uh, for a majority of the other animated movies that were independent, and by independent I just mean not Disney, and that's including Troll in Central Park, Don Bluth movies, and I think a majority of them, and I'm not going to count An American Tail, the original one, because I think that one came out in the late 80s. But if you were an independent studio releasing an animated movie in the early 1990s, your goose was cooked. That was not a good time because I think it was that they had lost a few million between like 6 or 7 movies combined. And the only one of the only few that actually made a profit was Fern Gully. And that made, I want to say, 2 or 3 million. So yeah, it was tough sledding for them. Let's see here. Jeanette, for sure you can tell his Simpson style humor slipped in there a bit with Dean. Yeah, and there's a lot of that in there. And the characters are so much fun and they have such one of the things I love most about this movie, and you can see it also in The Incredibles as it goes down the line, is the dialogue is really good. The characters are the best part. It's such a character how should I say? It's such a character oriented movie. I know it's about a giant robot, but it's about the people around the giant robot, teaching it and it learning from it. It's really, the robot really is a sponge. He's just learning from what other people tell him. And he takes it a little literally in a lot of cases, but he's he's really able to decipher it. And it's such a, I mean, you folks know it's a heartwarming story. But really quick, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to just introduce a goal here really quick. It's a new feature, and I love doing these live video retrospectives. I've done one, the Garfield one. If you haven't seen it yet, you can always go back and check it out. It's the Garfield 2024 movie that came out. This one I've been looking forward to doing a long time. And what I'm going to do here is, because I just like doing these, I think they're a lot of fun, and I want to put a lot more. I want to put a lot more into this channel. I want to be able to. I hired an editor a couple months ago. That's been going great. So the last couple of videos, um, except for the last unicorn video, which unfortunately had copyright problems, have all been done by my editor. And I want to keep doing more things. I want to do things like, get better equipment so we can have bigger streams and I can have more guests on. I just want to reinvest in better equipment is the name of the game for right now. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to put a goal, and I'm going to go ahead and just say, we'll say 10 super chats today. Um, and what I want to use that for is I just want to use it to, one, buy a mic cover, because I've noticed a lot of people saying that sometimes the video audio spikes when I talk, and that you can hear some breathing and some popping. And that's because I have to edit the audio all by myself, and editing's not my strongest suit. I can do it competently at times, but definitely not my strongest. So I am going to I'm going to put a goal here. We're just going to say 10 super chats, and I think that um that it's actually, what I want to say, like $6, $7. All the money I make, which is hardly anything from the channel, all goes back into being able to do these, and hopefully we can get that to work. So I'm going to go ahead and just start a goal. I'm going to say we'll just do 10 super chats. That should be able to get a mic cover, and that'd be really awesome. But if you guys don't feel like donating, that's not a problem at all. Just the fact that you folks are here and that we're going to be talking about the Iron Giant, that's good enough for me. And if you guys do super chat, I will always interrupt myself for what's going on, and I will read it. So let's see. Joey Baseball. A lot of famous animators today got their start on Giant because they hired a B crew to work on Giant, while all their A animators went to work on the Quest for Camelot. Boy, what a what a what a project to be diverted from. Jeanette, as much as I love Quest for Camelot, ouch. Gary Goldman was just fantastic, though. Very true. I haven't seen Quest for Camelot in a while. Maybe that's one we'll take a look at on the channel sometime. I Want My Slaw. This was Brad Bird's directorial debut, and he was in his 40s, and he didn't want to lose his shot, so he rushed the movie to come out a year ahead of schedule. And yeah, and that happens sometimes. It's the unfortunate reality of creativity. No matter how creative you want to be, you still, unless you're self-funding, you still have to answer to somebody. And especially as we've learned, as we've seen, nothing. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I was getting ahead of myself. But I Want My Slaw. Nothing makes me feel more poor than when I see a goal set and I can't contribute. I Want My Slaw. You are here. That is contribution enough. Jeanette, if I had the money, I would. I really hope you make your goal, though. I get it, Slot. Jeanette, like I said, the fact that you're here, it's enough. It's just to help with getting just getting some better equipment and fixing things. I've said before that I started this whole thing a couple years ago on my. I used to have an iPad, so it's not a problem at all. It took a year or two, finally got a computer, doing that, and then just investing in equipment, investing in the channel, because I want to be able to put out better things for you folks. What I really want to do is I want to be able to put out more content faster for you all. Like I do, I want to say about 2 shorts a week. I put out a video every 3 weeks. I'm getting ahead on that right now. And so for those of you here, if you weren't here last time, the next we're taking the holiday off. We're not putting out a video this upcoming week. January 19th will be the next video, and it's going to be on Disney's Marsupilami. So I'm using that time to get ahead. That one's already completed. Everything's locked and ready to go, just waiting for the editor to send it back. And then I'm already working on the one after that for February. And the point of that is to get ahead. That way I can do more videos in between, more not opinion-based videos, but I talked about this a little bit last time. So if you're here for the Garfield live retrospective, I want to do not only these movie animated movie and cartoon show retrospectives. I still want to do all cartoon content, but I would also like to do one of the ideas I had was to do um, a discussion about reboots, about the different kinds of reboots, why people do not like them, and why people love them, and basically what my thoughts are on reboots and how they should be handled going forward. So it's not necessarily just just to get ahead so I'm not stressing at the last moment, which I was definitely before I had an editor, but so I can put out more content. And then a couple of things we talked about also are um, a couple of things we talked about also. Sorry, I'm speaking a mile a minute. So a couple of things we also talked about are doing requests for retrospectives. I know Joey Baseball had mentioned it. I'm sorry I didn't get back to you earlier. It had a lot to do with the channel and just outside life. But I want to be able to start taking requests for retrospectives, and it would be donation based. So, you would. I'm still working on getting a price set, and depending if it's a movie or a series, how many episodes the series, how long the movie, it would just be based off of that. And I would love to already have 7 months of videos ahead. That way, I can do things like the reboots, things like requests for videos. So hopefully we'll get to that. Let's see. Joey Baseball. Have you ever read the book it's based on called The Iron Man? They changed it to The Iron Giant, not to confuse it with Marvel's Iron Man. No, I haven't. I haven't. I actually have borrowed a copy about a year ago, and it's still sitting. It's still sitting in my on my nightstand. So I do have to get around to it. I was hoping to get to it before this, but unfortunately, timing wise, just didn't work out. Brad Bird said he's not going to do a sequel, but it's WB property, and they've basically made reboots of Iron Giants with Ready Player One and multiverses. Yeah, and that was something I was discussing earlier. Uh, it really, the Iron Giant has had sort of a second life, and while I do like seeing him, it does feel kind of hollow that they see him as just sort of this big kid. Um, and I understand, like, with the characters in Ready Player One, what are you really gonna do? Like, how can you can't devote time to the Iron Giant. It was cool seeing him follow Mechagodzilla, or sorry, fight Mechagodzilla, but it just felt like he was a vessel. Like, hey, check out this fan service. Remember the Iron Giant? And again, it was cool. It was neat. It wasn't anything more than that. But now that we're seeing him almost be shoehorned a little bit more into these projects, it kind of makes me feel a little dirty. Like, all right, let's just leave the Iron Giant in the Iron Giant. I want to see him, but maybe not this much, and maybe not if it's going to be like this. Joey Baseball, before you get started, did my comment explaining what Carlton, your doorman, is? Yes, I did. I did see that. Like I said, been having a devil of a time uh, getting to things lately just because I've been trying to get ahead on the channel and because I've been just life in general. But I am looking at that. I am going over things, so hopefully I'll be able to get to that. And like I said, next year, hopefully I get ahead enough where I can do uh, requests for videos. Jeanette, I've seen some good reboots, few and far between. Granted, mostly I think sequels have more success since a lot of those can tend to be good. And that's true. I if there was an Iron Giant sequel, I don't know that I would be abject to it. But I would sometimes the passage of time doesn't help. There's reboots where we see like legacy sequels where it does help. And sometimes they just need a little time away or they make a unproduced script. But I don't know. I don't know unless it had maybe Brad Bird with it and the original writing team. It's always you see these press releases where it's like, oh, we grew up being such big fans of the IP. Now we get to work on it, and it's not that they don't care about it, but it's just that it's such a different viewpoint. It's like you're not writing the character it's writing like that you came up with. It's writing for the character that you've seen that you're trying to write in their voice. So could it work? Hey, maybe it could work. But I think at this point, I'd rather just not have an Iron Giant sequel. I want my slaw. I don't like how they depict Giant in Ready Player One or in multiverses because they made him a violent character when he's meant to be a completely non-violent character, and that's a fair point. Um, I don't think that matters ultimately to them. It was just them saying, "Hey, look at this." And plus, he's a giant character. He's like one of the biggest characters, so it did make for a cool fight. I mean, I liked seeing him fight Mechagodzilla, but I can't really say any more than that because, you know, that's all it was. By the way, the robot's name is Giant, not Iron Giant. Hogarth refers to him as Giant throughout the movie, but never Iron Giant until you see the statue. Yeah, that's true. His name is Giant, and I probably will, unfortunately, continue to call him Iron Giant just because I'm so used to him being Iron Giant as we know him. Joey Baseball, it was cool to see Giant in Space Jam 2. Nice, fun cameo. All right, well, if Joey's going to start calling him just Giant, now I feel like I have to get on board. Uh, all right, so we'll go for about 10 more minutes. I do have a couple more things just to fix up here. Right at the end, I want to make sure that everything's running smoothly. So I'm going to go ahead and ask a question right now, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in the chat. Give me one moment because I want to be able to read your comments while I just kind of fix these last things. So let me go ahead and enter it in really quickly. All right. So here we go. I want my slot. This was one of the rare pre-Fast and Furious Vin Diesel roles. Yeah, that's right. Pre-Groot Vin Diesel. Yeah, I needed not the same character, but a very similar one. So I'm going to ask the question because since we're talking about reboots and sequels, if one were to be made, what would you like to see in an Iron Giant sequel? Now it can take place right after the events of this first one when he's being rebuilt, or it could be take place now or in the future. So I want to know what you folks would do. And I'm going to just go ahead and fix a couple things here. So if you guys do that, if you guys will just put your answers in, I want to read them off just while I finish fixing this. So go ahead and let me know what you folks would do, and we'll get started in about 10 minutes. But I'm going to be reading these as you folks continue on. So what I would do personally, and I'm going to go ahead and just comment here as well. Um, I think you have to have Hogarth in the movie, or I would at least like to see Hogarth. Um, and what I think you would do is you have Hogarth. You can go the you can go the expected route and either have him be, you know, 20 years older in his 30s or late 20s, or maybe even an adult and he has kids of his own. And the kids, he has one more nut that's trying to, one more bolt or screw that's trying to escape, and his kids discover it and they find the giant and they have that sort of reunion, which, okay, I could see that happening, but I would rather have it just 10 years later or 5 years later. Like, not a completely direct sequel picking up from right where it left off, but I think that'd be kind of cool to have it where just make it totally different, where the giant maybe is captured by somebody else because we see him in the snow. I don't remember exactly where it is just off the top of my head, but we have the giant in the snow and he's captured by another country. Like maybe he is captured by the Russians, and this is right after the Cold War, and this makes the threat of the Cold War reigniting. Or this, he's captured by that. Like I would want to do something like that. Maybe they're trying to reprogram him or figure out what makes him tick, and just something. I want something really different. I want something totally different than the first one. Not because I didn't love the first one, obviously, but because we've had this story, and what always gets me about when they do stories is that when they follow it the exact same way. So for me personally, I like Star Wars. I used to like it a lot more before the newest ones came out, and The Force Awakens. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but it was so similar to the first one, is literally beat by beat, and it was, to me, I didn't enjoy it that much, because it was so similar. And for The Last Jedi, which a lot of people dislike, I don't even love it. I don't know. I don't want to say I don't like it because I feel like that might be harsh. It did a lot of things that I wouldn't agree with, I wouldn't have done, but I can at least appreciate how different it was. So with this, like with this Iron Giant one, I'm sure, assuming it would be good, I just want something different. I want something really different. I feel like that would be a good way to go. Um, Joey Baseball, maybe a prequel, because we learn of a planet he comes from where all robots look exactly like Giant. That would be cool. A prequel to the Iron Giant. So here's the only thing that sort of gets me on that. If you do a prequel to the Iron Giant where you see the robot's home planet, or here's what I don't necessarily want. I wouldn't want that to happen because I wouldn't want that to happen because my fear is that you're going to see that he's made by humans. And and if that's the case, then that really takes a lot of the mystique away from me. It would make sense because he's made out of metal, he's a machine, and I totally understand that. But if I found out the Iron Giant was made by men, that would just really make me kind of bummed out. Um, but it could definitely work. I'm just curious, is like maybe the other thing I'm afraid of is that he came to work, or I'm sorry, he came to not work, I'm sorry, that he came to Earth before and he interacted with humans before. And I don't know if I'd like to see that because then I feel like it takes away from Hogarth and it makes it less special. So I could see a prequel happening, but I don't want to lose any of that mystique. That's the only thing. We'll take a look at another one. Jeanette, maybe sorry, it would depend upon who directed it. I've been so burned, probably not. What I'd like to see is a prequel, honestly. I'd like to know what made people so desperate to build something like that. He really is a dangerous, capable of it. He really is a dangerous, capable of it anyway, when you get down to it. He's pretty amazing in his capabilities. So yeah, I agree. Um, this is assuming, Brad Bird or somebody handles it. So a prequel, that's pretty interesting that you folks are into the prequel idea. Um, and again, I think it could work. I do think it could work. I just, like I said, be a little nervous about it. I want my slaw. If there had to be another one, it should be an invasion of all the other robots. That would be a good one. How about that Iron Giant wasn't the only one to fall to Earth and he fell to somewhere else. He fell to Russia. And then it's the Iron Giant fighting him and the other robots come and he somehow has to convince them about peace. Maybe something like that. I like that. I think we're getting closer. I think we're going to develop a script and send it to Warner Brothers by the end of this. Ooh, good idea, Jeanette. Joey Baseball made by humans on another planet. That could be interesting. I don't know if you mean like aliens on another planet made him or humans who live on another planet made him from Earth. I don't know. I don't know what that means, but I do like that. All right. If you folks will give me just 5 minutes, I am going to just fix this last thing and then we'll get started. I'm going to pose one more question because I'm going to just be away for a quick couple minutes and then we will get started. So I'm going to put one more question on here. Give me one moment. And this is going to be a really simple one, a simple question, but it's going to be loaded as well. What made you fall in love with the Iron Giant? I would really like to know because there's so many things in this movie to like. I don't know if it's the relationship that the Giant, see, I'm going ahead and call him the Giant, uh, and Hogarth have. I don't know if it's just that the script is so tight. I don't know if it's the look of it because I think it's a beautiful looking show or sorry movie. So I want to know what you folks think of it. So give me about 5 minutes. I'm gonna come back. We're gonna go ahead and get started, and I'm gonna read your folks' comments. Apologies again. Still getting the kinks worked out for these live video retrospectives, but I really appreciate your patience with me. So give me just a couple more minutes. We'll read the comments, and then after that, we're gonna go ahead and get started with the retrospective.
Kent. right. Where is it?
What?
You don't man. You were scaring me there. Come on. Some in industrialist. You want some fulfillment? I give.
Almost done here, folks. I'm going to go ahead and read the comments in just a few minutes, just finishing up this last couple things here, and then we're going to get started.
Machine. Mo.
No, Atomo. I, Superman.
Okay, Superman. Take this.
Okay, almost done. Still going to just read a couple of these comments off right now because I don't want to leave you folks totally in the dark. So what made you fall in love with the Iron Giant? I'm going to say for me, just because of how real it felt, and how engaging the characters were. I thought Hogarth was just a really cool, likable kid. And I'll talk more about that in the I'll talk more about it in the actual retrospective. Hogarth was great, and the characters were so fun. Like the giant is just lovable. He's this huge, monstrous thing that really is scary, like people have said, but he's totally lovable. You can't help but not love him because he's like a little kid. Dean, he's a really cool guy, and Annie, Hogarth's mom, is just she's really nice. Jennifer Aniston does a really great job. I would actually like to see her in more animated roles. And Kent Kent Mansley, the government agent. He's so neurotic and he's so paranoid. I love him. He's not even really a bad guy. I'll get more to him in a little bit, but just the characters for me is what does it. Joey Baseball, no. I mean, what do you mean by your biggest fear is he was made by humans? Do you mean humans on another planet? No. So what I actually meant by the sequel, if there were to be a prequel and it showed that he was made by humans, I feel like that would take a little bit of the mystique away of the giant for me. It would totally make sense if they developed him and he somehow got sent out or he was a space project, but then you lose the mystery of what he is. So like I like to think that he came from a planet where, whatever headcanon you have, that all these robots rule, or they were made by maybe even some other race. You don't know. And that's what I think is the most appealing thing about him, or one of them, because he was obviously created as some sort of a weapon. And if we find out that he was just made by people, then it's like, well, then he can understand emotions, or he at least has the capability to understand human emotions because he was made by humans. And for some reason, that just sort of takes me out of it. I Want My Slaw. It was love at first viewing for me. I saw this movie advertised on TV all summer long of 1999, but never had the chance to see it until my mom got me the VHS from Pathmark. Oh man, yeah. That was the always torturous when you would see an ad for a cartoon or a movie that you wanted to see. But the worst was when it would come out and for some reason you couldn't see it. Like I remember the Tiny Toon Adventures, my summer vacation, when that was advertised, and I was so excited to see it. And you can't always be around for cartoons, so I missed it. And it would just be that one thing that came around maybe once a year during the summer, and I was always pulling my hair out just trying to see it because it felt like such a rarity. And one of the other ones like that was Kiki's Delivery Service. I remember it would appear on Toon Disney or Disney Channel, whatever it was at the time. And and it was just so much fun. It was such a great movie, and I would always try and catch it, but it would always be at some weird hour, like 7 in the morning or 9 at night. So I always had to plan accordingly, and I had to remember it. We didn't always have a TV. There wasn't always a TV guide around, or you didn't have the internet back then, or at least if you did, it was a very low key version of the internet. So you always had to catch it. But yeah, so the fact that you actually got the VHS after waiting for that long and then you got to watch it as many times as you wanted, I hope you wore that tape out. I wanted to see it in theaters, but it just never happened. I do remember seeing a big cardboard standee for the Iron Giant in the theaters and saying to my mom, I want to see that, but didn't. I'm sorry, Slaw, but I hope that having the VHS did make up for that. Joey Baseball, what made me fall in love with the movie was I just had never seen an animated movie like it before. It was unlike anything I had seen before, and I just kept watching it over and over and over again. And yeah, I mean it was a great movie. It really is something that you can watch on repeated viewings, and I feel like it's something that you can actually have somebody sit down and watch with you because Lord knows it is hard enough to get somebody to watch a cartoon with me, and it's either going to be too wacky or it's going to be a cartoon, but it's going to be too serious from them, and they'll be like, I was expecting a cartoon, something fun. So this is sort of that great medium where it is a real story, and there are a lot of real things about it, but it still is cartoony and it's fun. So I love this one. Jeanette, for me, the character sold me. The adults and kids act realistic. The script was down to earth and no one felt forced in their dialogue. It was as good as Treasure Planet in that way. Very realistic. I agree about the script totally. It's fun. And there are some, like, I feel like Hogarth acts a little bit older than he is at some points. And all the other characters, like Kent, he's so silly in his rage. Dean is a cool guy, but he's still very youthful. So I feel like they sometimes actually level out, and which is why all the characters understand each other so well. Um, and I've never seen Treasure Planet. Never seen it. Always heard great things. So hey, maybe that's when we do for a live retrospective. Joey Baseball. It also makes the 50s look really cool. And even though I feel like the 50s is over romanticized, the 50s wasn't particularly a good time for people of color. Yes, that's true. But it is still a cool 50s look, but it's that kind of 50s where it's not poodle skirts and, greaser hair. Um, I mean, I think the only thing that really kind of quote unquote dates it is, and I don't even mean date it. I mean shows sort of at that time is Dean's beatnik kind of look, where he's dressed in all black, so he's kind of hipstery going into the '60s. But it's sort of that Anytown USA, Anytime USA sort of vibe to it. So yeah, it's the '50s, but I think it's more in the '50s and the technology and the current events at the time, rather than the '50s in the streets, so to speak. Jeanette, well, this being set in Maine, it was very removed from the tumult of the times too. Yeah, that's true. I want my slot. Is it clear? I loved Pathmark. For those who don't know what Pathmark is, it's a grocery store on the East Coast, and it was my childhood supermarket. Pathmark's been gone for decades, sadly. I love Pathmark Joy Baseball. Give me a couple more minutes, folks. Just having a little more difficulty here, just trying to get the last of it solved, and I promise you, we will get started in just a few minutes. It wouldn't be a Goose live stream if we didn't have some initial problems from the outset, I guess. I'm gonna do one more thing though. I'm gonna ask one more question because I am curious about this from you folks, and then I promise you after this one we'll get it started, even if I have to go without the without the rest of the slides because I'm having a little trouble with the slides, so that's kind of what's holding us back. So I really appreciate you you folks being patient. Let's take a look here. A couple more seconds. Okay, I'm gonna ask one more question. We're gonna do last 5 minutes, and then for sure at 5:50, we'll go 5:55. We're gonna get started on this, or sorry, 4:55. I'm not gonna keep you folks stranded for an hour. 4:55, we'll get started for sure. So I'm gonna ask one question. It's not gonna be related to Iron Giant actually. So give me 1 second while I type this in. All right, and this question is just going to be for the channel in general, and I'll read Jeanette's really quick. Goose, it's a crime that you haven't seen Treasure Planet. It will be an instant love for you, I think. And that actually is what gave me an idea for this question. So what's one movie you'd like to see a live video retrospective on? And if you haven't done this before, if you didn't do Garfield, then you'll kind of see what it's about. It's a lot of fun, and I love getting everybody's input. So 5:55, we'll get started. If you guys want to answer that, I'll come back, read the comments, and we'll jump right into it because I don't want to keep you guys here for any longer than you deserve, to be. So give me just a couple minutes and we'll get started.
It was an accident. Take this!
Get back! I said get back! I mean it!
No, stop. I...
It was an accident. He's our friend.
He's a piece of hardware, Hogarth. Why do you think the army was here? He's a weapon. A big gun that walks.
I not done.
Yeah? What's that, huh? You almost did that to Hogarth!
No.
Come back!
Hogarth! Hey, stop!
Giant, come back!
It was defensive. He reacted to the gun. You're not gonna get there fast enough on foot.
Hey, there it is. I see it. Ow! Daddy!
I am not a gun.
Mom.
Almost done, folks. Just 3 minutes and we will get started. And I'm going to read those comments. So, yeah, definitely let me know. Not just one. Well, I guess I put one movie, but let me know a couple movies you folks would like to see because I am actually keeping a running list on live video retrospective movies to do. So let me know because these are going to make the list. So if you're enjoying it, and I'm sorry that there hasn't been much of a video retrospective yet, but let me know because I want to do some more with you folks.
He's harmless. You gotta tell the general.
This is all your fault, beatnik. If you hadn't been all President.
You can fly! Hogarth! Try plugging your arm straight ahead, like so. That was close! No!
It's still alive! Just shoot at it!
All right, folks, I'm going to read a couple comments as I'm just finishing this up here. Let's go ahead and see. Wow, all right, we got some good ones. You should use the hang in there baby scene from the live action The Cat in the Hat when you have to deal with technical stuff. Joey Baseball. Yep, I know. And I wish I had more time to just get things set up. Unfortunately, I was just literally sliding into home base here at the last minute. Not to make, puns with your name, but I barely got in here. So I definitely should have that. But hopefully after this, we won't have any more. Like I said, getting ahead on everything so we won't have to deal with this. Jeanette, I'm having fun. Hope everyone else is too. I like conversation. The crowd is chill. No movie even required. Thank you, Jeanette. I appreciate that. And it's like I said, the whole reason I do this is because I just enjoy hanging out and talking cartoons with you folks. Not a lot of people in my life, at least, enjoy cartoons, even popular ones. Like, you know, I'll be like, oh, did you see the new whatever, or even an Iron Giant? And nobody I know that I, work with or anything with know what it is even. So it's nice to have like-minded folks here who actually really not only know about it, but enjoy it and are passionate about it. So I love that about you folks. I want my slaw. I don't know how many actually like this movie or just pretend to like it ironically, but I would love to see one for Shark Tale where Will Smith plays a fish who slays a shark. I love it. I have never seen um I have never seen Shark Tale, and I know that it's like a pretty well, what? It was like the one that came out right before Finding Nemo, or like right at the same time as Finding Nemo. And I do know like it's that, and there's like a gangster shark kind of in it, if I remember correctly. But yeah, that was supposed to be a huge, huge movie. And I think Will Smith had turned down some other movie that ended up being big to do Shark Tale. I don't know if it was Finding Nemo or something along those lines, but it yeah, it was I've never seen it, and I would actually like to do that. And that's one of the other things I really enjoy doing the live retrospectives on, because with the main channel, I do try to keep it to either things I've seen or things I have more familiarity with. But for the live retrospectives, I want to do like newer movies because I don't watch a lot of newer animated movies because I really don't watch a lot of 3D Pixar style movies. But um that would be something. And then yeah, I want to see those older ones, like um the ones that do actually have sort of these cult followings that don't get talked about enough, because I see a lot of movies on, or like, reviews on YouTube where it's just like the caption, hey, remember this, uh and or like, boy, that was weird, but they don't really talk about the movie. They talk about how weird it was, but not really about the movie in particular. So that's what I want to do with the live retrospectives. Unless the movie is just really, really just not made with any sort of passion or creativity or love in it, um, then look, it's going to be hard to find something nice to say. But even if it's a movie that, look, Shark Tale, I know didn't get the best reviews or have the biggest box office, um, you know, I can respect that it was, made with good intention, or at least, intention to entertain, intention to be, successful, and not just well, anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself, but let's go ahead and just read the last couple comments because I'm just finishing up fixing what needs to be fixed here. Let's take a look, and then I promise you we're going to get started. um Jeanette, I haven't seen that, but I see any animated flick at least once to give it a fair shot. I would too, and I especially trust you folks. Joey Baseball, Osmosis Jones would be a good one. It's hybrid live action, animated, but mainly animated, but I love it. It's Chris Rock as a white blood cell who has to live in the very sick body of Bill Murray. And that was always such a strange choice I felt Bill Murray made just to be in that movie. I mean, I know he was the voice of Garfield, but the only part I really remember about Osmosis Jones is that he got really sick and he had a big zit on top of him, and it was just bubbling like white pus, and it just exploded in some lady's face. I mean, it was pretty nasty. But that's my only real memory I have of Osmosis Jones, and I'd like to see it again. So that would definitely be one I would strongly consider to put on here. All right, let's just go ahead and finish off these comments. Then we'll get started. I'm sorry, like I said, just had these last minute technical difficulties that kind of took over. And I'm just putting it on the side, finishing up on the side as we read it. Jeanette, ooh, if we're allowed to have at least two, my second would probably be Quest for Camelot or The Secret of Nim. I haven't seen Quest for Camelot in a long time, but Secret of Nim would be a great one because I feel like I also like to do movies or shows that don't have, like, sometimes there'll be a great one, like The Secret of Nim would be great, but I feel like there's a lot smarter people than me who have things to say about it, and a lot of the times things that I would say have been covered to death. So I never want to do something like that, just outright. But but I would like to do something like that for the live retrospective because, like I said, you guys teach me a whole lot, and I love hearing everybody's opinions on these. So Secret of Nim, that's definitely going on the list. And Quest for Camelot too. I'll have to rewatch Quest for Camelot just so I can kind of get reacquainted with it, but I would definitely do it. All right, let's see here. Just read these last couple comments as I finish these ones up. I want my slaw. Jeanette, a lot of people hate on Shark Tale because it played heavy on pulp culture references, but I love the movie to death, even though it's divisive. And that's something that I'll admit isn't my favorite when they go full pop culture. And I feel like a lot of movies do that these days. And not to say that movies in the 70s, 80s, 90s didn't do that as well. I mean, I can't tell you how many, 70s and 80s movies or animated shows did a parody of the Beatles. But I mean, that's a common one that's going to be on forever. So they did it, but I just feel like now it's sometimes it's not even about the movie. It's like, how can we make people laugh at things right now, right this second? Um, with like the topic of the day. So I don't know. That's just me though. That's just all right. So finally got this fixed ish. I'm gonna have to apologize for you guys in advance. You'll see the part where they were having little technical difficulties, but other than that, I think we're at least pretty good to go here. So let me go ahead and just make one quick switch, and then we'll be ready, folks. Hallelujah! I thank you so much for sticking with me, and I promise you, I'm gonna make it worth it. And if I don't, your all your donations back. That's a joke. All right, let's take a look here. Um, all right, so with that said, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. We'll just read the rest of these comments real quick, and then we're ready to go, folks. I love this. All right. Um, let's see here. We're going to speed through these comments. Jeanette, I fully understand. In that case, Labyrinth got shut down for that too, and it's my favorite, being too poppy. Labyrinth, are you talking about I think it's live action, right? Live action with a puppet? Oh, I'm sorry, David Bowie, right? Strange Magic was a favorite of mine too, and it got a lot of heat for the same thing. I'd give Shark Tale a shot, no problems. Maybe we'll do a Shark Tale one. So that seems to be popular here. I Want My Slaw. Monster House would be good for Halloween. Probably the best kids' horror movie ever made. Another one I haven't gotten around to seeing, and I hear it's fantastic. I hear it's really good. So maybe that one will be on. I'll definitely put it on the list though. I'm a Hocus Pocus fan for that time of year, but that one was super cute for sure. And yeah, Hocus Pocus, I actually recently rewatched maybe about half of it for the first time. It's really good. It's really funny. Although I can't get past that kid. I'm so mad at him for I can't remember how he brings the witches back, something with the book, but I was just like, why did you have to do that? But it was funny. It was crazy to hear like the kids like, oh, only it was something like the blood of a virgin or something about a virgin can bring them back. And the kid's like, what are you looking at me for? Something like that. It was so funny to just see but that was like, hey, Disney was okay to do that at the time. I Want My Slaw. Shark Tale was a box office hit for DreamWorks. Um, 374.6 million worldwide against $75 million budget, earning an Academy Award nomination for Best Animated Feature. All right. I mean, hey, I'm sold. We can do a Shark Tale one. That's good for me. But people are divisive when it comes to Shark Tale, which I understand. The fish look weird and look like caricatures of the actors. I'm still up to give it a watch. I love Osmosis Jones. I saw it for the first time in biology, which made me appreciate it more because we had just learned about the body. Yeah, and it's totally anatomically accurate. Did you put Osmosis Jones on the list? You bet I did. All right, so let me go ahead here, and I'm just going to put this up right now. Okay, and we are going to be all set to go. And I'll make the switch if we need to, but let's go ahead and get started. Sorry about that, folks, and thank you again for your patience. So we're gonna pretend like we're just getting into this now, like it's not 5 o'clock already. Hey everybody, welcome to It's the Goose live video retrospective. For anybody just joining us, we've been dealing with a couple technical difficulties on my part for the better part of an hour, but we're starting right now, and we're gonna have a really good time. So what we do is, since we obviously can't show the movie for copyright purposes, what I do is I put screenshots up and I describe what's going on with them. I give my take, and the best part is it's fully interactive, so you folks give your take. I'll answer as many as I can, and since we did get started late, we'll go a little late if you folks are okay with that. And I'll say it one more time, just for anybody joining us, we have a goal. The goal is to get 10 super chats. It doesn't matter if it's a quarter, a dollar, whatever you can give. We're going to try and just get some equipment to make these things better. Hopefully a new mic cover. If you can't donate, not a problem at all. I'm more than happy to just have you here and talk about The Iron Giant, which is a 1999 film from Warner Brothers. And man, this one is a classic, and I'm excited to get into it. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. And don't forget, put your comments. I'll try to get to as many as possible. But if you want yours read for sure, you can go ahead and leave a super chat. So let's go ahead and get started on this. So the movie starts off with Sputnik orbiting the Earth in 1957. And if you don't know, Sputnik was the first artificial satellite launched by the Soviet Union, and it got the ball rolling for what would be the eventual space race with the United States. And as you can see here, Earth 1957, and it has the hammer, the Russian hammer on it. I Want My Slob, barely a 90s film, lol, but it counts. Hey, as long as there's a 19 in front of the last two numbers, I'm going with 1990s. Uh, so we see an asteroid careen towards Earth before, or what we think is an asteroid, cutting to a ship off the coast of Maine in a storm, and it crashes into this towering figure. And there's a great shot where it actually shows the sailor first, and he's on the bow of the ship and he's looking up, and all you see, this is a really great shot, by the way, too, because of how fuzzy it looks, because it's supposed to be raining. It's supposed to be during a storm with high waves, and you can, it just is so interesting how the rainfall looks, how it looks like it's falling down towards the camera, and it's still like there's a mist and a haze, and it's a really cool shot, and it's really imposing too. Um, Especially the way, whatever this is, its lighted eyes peering into the night before looking down at the boat. Um, Thankfully, though, the sailor washes up on the shore, so nobody passes away in this early. And we come to the next morning on a boy riding his bike to the local diner. And this is sort of, we were talking about that 50s aesthetic where this is 1957, slowly getting into the 60s. So you have that bike, that classic red bike. Um, but this is sort of really an Anytown USA slash, Anytown, anywhere, anytime. It's a really an evergreen because you can look at this and I mean, it says 1957, but if I had told you this was 2007 and it was just in a really small town in the Midwest, I would say that's believable. It kind of actually reminds me of the town in the Halloween Tree. I did a retrospective for that, if you haven't seen it. But in the Halloween Tree, it's sort of the same thing. Everybody's wearing these nondescript clothes where they could really be of any time, and I love, I love scenes like that. I love scenes like that because it could be at any time period, and the only thing that really makes you realize what decade it is the technology. And I think that it's a strong point here for it to say that it's 1957 because the fact that it's a big metal machine, like a, as we know it, is the giant, the Iron Giant, um, it's primitive enough where it doesn't look like it came from the far off future or some super advanced race, but it's still big enough and imposing enough where it definitely worries the government. It definitely worries these people in power. So it, the film does a great job balancing um, does a great job balancing the time, like showing you the time and how it navigates time in this. Um, so we'll go ahead and read a couple comments here. Barely 90 film that counts. Ringer the alarm clock. Ringer, thank you for joining us. When I got the VHS, it came with the toy of the giant attached to it. That's awesome. I would love to see that toy. Jeanette, this shot instance always gives me some HP Lovecraft vibes, such HP Lovecraft vibes. Yeah, and it's really eerie. I just love how, and Joey Baseball says that Marv confused it for a lighthouse and nobody believes he saw a giant metal man. Yeah, and it really does look like a lighthouse. And there is something that's just like almost, and I'm going to say it because it's the only one I know, but like Cthulhu, where it's just this thing that you don't know what it is, but you just know it's there. It's this large, imposing, almost phantom of a creature. And it's just scary because it's almost, there's that old adage where, or adage where um, what you don't know, the mystery is scarier than what it could ever possibly be. And just seeing this amorphous, and what always got me is when something stands in the ocean because look, he's close to shore, so it might not be that deep, but something able to stand in the ocean is sort of a freaky thought to me because man, how big is this thing really? Um, Ringer the alarm clock? Well, it couldn't be from 2007 because Hogarth would be attached to his phones. And yeah, that's what I was saying about the technology. Like, that's the only thing in movies that gets me. Like, in this movie, you do see, there's I believe it's a rotary phone, but it's so hard to have a movie like you can't have a movie set in 2024. I mean, they'll do the thing now where they go, "Oh yeah, we're in the woods. We're not getting any reception." And so that's why nobody shows their phones. And it's understandable. It makes it believable because otherwise you'd go, "Well, it's 2024. Why is nobody showing their phones?" Um, but yeah, so I love that. I love that it did take place in the 50s because I think that was sort of a cool thing for the time and the giant and to limit technology and to make his technology seem all the more impressive. Jeanette, also the cars they have are a dead giveaway to the time period. Exactly. Exactly. But you could say they're in Cuba because, all those cars are old. That's a joke. All right. Um, so we come to learn the boy's named Hogarth, which is the most unfortunate and also unique name for an ordinary human boy. I've never heard anything like Hogarth in my life. It's such an unnecessary name too, and I feel like it's it's memorable if you remember the movie, but it's just like I think it kind of holds back from remembering the character because everybody remembers the giant, and I think the next kid, the kid is obviously the next one you'd remember the most. But I couldn't name him. If before I rewatched this movie, I'd have no idea what his name was, and you would think it'd be something Billy, Kyle, but Hogarth. That is an interesting one. If anybody has the trivia on why he's named Hogarth, please put it in the comments. But he talks to his mom, a waitress at the diner, played by Jennifer Aniston, who is great, who's really fantastic in this movie. I had said it earlier, but I wish she would do more cartoon voice acting. I'm sure it's not a priority for her. Maybe as she gets older, it's something she'd consider, but she really does a great job. And yeah, and so he shares, if you see the box there on the stool next to him, she's working the diner, and he tells her that he found something. And before he can even share what he found, his mom interrupts him saying, "No more pets." And it just shows how well these two know each other. Uh, because before he reveals what he's going to show her, she's already privy to his tricks and his sweet talking. And she reminds him of the raccoon he kept as a pet, and that he'll only be responsible for an animal until he feels guilty and sets it free. So that also shows how he believes like it also shows he believes in sort of a justice through freedom relationship. Like even though he wants the pet selfishly, he's not going to keep it around. Like he's not going to keep it around just because his better judgment that these animals deserve to be free takes hold of him and he releases it. And in this unfortunate case, it seems like it was a raccoon. Um, but this is also a productive way, not just to show the relationship between him and his mom, but also his ideals. And it is a funny interaction. Like he asks for her to at least look, but the squirrel escapes and he searches around for it. And he ends up asking for help finding it from the beatnik looking guy who we know is Dean. And they overhear a sailor talking about this encounter. So this is Earl. Uh, and of course, he's not getting any respect because the story sounds ludicrous. Having a giant metal man, and he says a guy from Mars, an invader from Mars, was in the ocean that I crashed to. And the other men in town joke that, he says he doesn't know what it was, and they go, well, knowing you, Earl, it was either beer or whiskey, most likely whiskey, and they all laugh at him. But that joke really kind of shows how different a time it was when this movie came out that they could get away with that joke. Um, and like once in a while you'll see, especially now, like you'll have pop culture jokes which they can lean a little adult, which okay, hey, if it's funny, it's fine. I have no problem with that at all. Um, but a reference like this is just straight up a joke about this guy drinks too much. He drinks so much so frequently that they don't believe that he saw anything, that they just think he overindulged in alcohol. So just a strange, like, just I can't ever imagine not only the mention of alcohol in a cartoon now, but but the fact that they're making fun of him avidly for being an over drinker. I just think that's funny and definitely something that's considered taboo and one of those things where, it was the 90s and it was, I don't know what time that things changed like that. But to see it in this movie sort of surprised me, but it was also refreshing because not in a way like good, finally we're bringing back this kind of dialogue, but in a way like this is just sort of how people, like real adults and real people, talk in life, and it's not meant to be some taboo thing. It's not meant to corrupt children, even though that might be a little bit of the way it's taken now. But that's just sort of how it is. And so I have a lot of respect for the movie, and it sort of brings me back to a time where these things weren't always, they weren't always so traumatic, and you could just say things. But we'll read a couple comments. Let's see here. Hogarth, I want my slaw. Hogarth was the name of the boy in the book, but he didn't have a last name. They gave him the last name Hughes after Ted Hughes, the author of the book, The Iron Man. Oh, that's cool. I like that. But still, we still got to find a name. Why Hogarth is the name? I want my slaw. Oh, Jeanette, Hogarth is the kind of name where you say it's a family name. That's funny. That's true. Yeah, that is definitely that's a name. I mean, there's two kinds of names I feel like people have. Like the more exotic your name, if it's a common name, people just comment and make a joke. And if it's exotic, they always have questions about it. That's exactly, it's a family name. That's a perfect response. I want my slaw. Google says Hogarth is of Dutch origin. Hoog, high, ard, nature character. Wow, that's interesting. That's cool. All right, I like that a lot. That's really cool. Maybe I'm assuming that was intentional. Still, an extremely odd choice for the name, but if there was one thing I'd assume you changed from the book, it might be that name, but I guess not. Um, Joey Baseball, the goal is about to end and I can't contribute. I feel so bad. Joey Baseball, you're here hanging out. We're talking the Iron Giant. Don't feel bad. I feel bad for putting you folks waiting for so long, but now that we're getting to the movie, I'm having a great time. And I was having a great time before just talking about the movie, before we even started talking about what's actually going on. So don't feel bad. I appreciate you folks sticking with it, and we're going to just have a lot of fun just going through the rest of this movie. I want my slaw. That whiskey or beer joke I didn't get as a child. I still laugh because they laughed, even though I didn't get it. And yeah, this is the kind of thing where um, a kid like would just laugh because they're making fun of him. Like, hey, we don't believe you. You're just a weirdo, a weird guy, or a kook, as Dean would call him later. But yeah, it's just it really did bring me back to a time where you could say things like that and not have to worry about, oh, what's the backlash going to be? What are we going to get reprimanded for this just offhanded comment? And it doesn't have to be some, really off-color joke, but this is just a way people talk, and I think that it makes the dialogue and the characters and just the conversation feel more realistic. So I like it for that. So Dean, he says to the men, Earl's being made fun of, and you can see he gets a little down, that he saw the monster too. And when Hogarth excitedly wants to look for the creature and know more, Dean just says he was sticking up for the old guy, because if they don't, who will? Who's going to stick up for the kooks? And I really like that. And in the same way that we got to see, um, well, let me put it this way. Like, one thing the movie's doing at an incredibly rapid pace, and quite well, I might add, is introducing us to not only the characters, but who they are. Like, Hogarth is rambunctious, but he believes in freedom because, as his mom said, you keep these animals, you feel like they have to be let go, so you let them go. And we see from her, because she goes, no, absolutely not. You can't keep this pet. And he goes, you didn't even let me show you. And she goes, all right, fine. Let me see. Let me see. Which, I mean, that's hilarious. Like, you can't be this strong parent and then all of a sudden just relent to your kid. Like, we can tell that she really loves him, even though he drives her crazy. And, Dean, he's got good integrity. Like, this guy was being made fun of, and even at the risk of, they ended up making fun of Dean, saying he's crazy too. And at the risk of him being made fun of, he sticks up for him, which I really like that. And for the first three characters in the first 5 minutes or so of this movie, um, I really like all of them. All three of them, just in their first interactions, they're extremely likable, and it makes me excited to see what other sides we're going to see to them, or what more we're going to learn about them. Um, So Hogarth's mom comes over to take him away, and at that moment, the squirrel that Hogarth is looking for crawls up the guy's pant leg, and he's doing his best to hold it together. He's trying to be inconspicuous so Hogarth doesn't get in trouble. But it finally becomes too much to bear. And before I even go to the next slide, I didn't remember this scene at all. It was so funny because this was just the most random thing I didn't expect. But he stands up announcing he'd like to apologize in advance. And as he unzips his pants, the squirrel leaps out of the fly of his pants. I mean, this you couldn't have picked a better screenshot or a more odd moment, but it's so funny. And it's funny because there's no build up to it. He just stands up and he goes, I have to apologize in advance. And you don't know what he's going to do. You don't know. I thought originally, because I haven't seen the movie in years, that he was just going to stand up and freak out and go screaming, or he was going to do just something, anything. But I did not expect him, which makes sense since the squirrel was in his pants, to unzip and just let it fly. And that's exactly what he does. And he just does it so fast. There's no like indication, like he's not fiddling with the zipper. You don't see the squirrel bouncing around down there. So the fact that he just gets up and unzips, it's really funny. And it ends up being probably, I'd say, the funniest part of the movie and one of the funnier, most unexpected gags I've actually seen in a really long time. But right on cue, um, the squirrel scrambles around the diner, hopping off the waitress and ruining everyone else's meal. And all the while, with Hogarth's mom, looking at Dean and her son in disapproval, which a great shot and a totally fair one at that. Let's take a look at some comments here. I want my slot. People did seem friendlier back then. Today, people would never just befriend someone in a diner and start talking to them. But people also don't hang out in diners anymore either. Well, yeah, if it's a kid and he's going up to you, I think you sort of have to be nice to a kid. At least in the 50s you did. I don't know about now. I've seen some pretty appalling things in in restaurants when it comes to kids. Joey Baseball, diners were already a dying thing by the 90s. They still existed, but I never saw a diner being used as a hangout spot like they did in Happy Days. Yeah, I mean, there's still a couple greasy spoons around that, there's regulars at. Jeanette, I love how all the people in the diner just look at him so blandly. They did not expect what he does. I didn't expect what he does. So I think that's right at the moment right before they realize what's going on. There's a squirrel coming out of that man's pants. Yeah. I'm gonna embroider that on a pillow and sell it as merch for you folks. There's a squirrel coming out of that man's pants. Could there be a better slogan for the channel? Ringer the alarm clock. I still remember there being a smoking and non-smoking section at my local diner. It was the last of its kind before you couldn't smoke indoors. I hated indoor smoking. Seems barbaric to me now. Yeah, I mean, that is just, I mean, you want to talk about different times? That's one of the things this movie doesn't show. They do show Kent smoking out of a pipe, but man, what a different time, huh? Smoking and non-smoking sections. If you were in the non-smoking section in a restaurant that had smoking, you were in the smoking section just by secondhand. So, you know, lots changed these days. So, Hogarth arrives home and his mom calls to let him know she'll be working late. And as she tells him to fix himself a chicken dinner, this is one of the things I was talking about earlier. He lifts up the bread box and he's got Wonder Bread and he's got Twinkies. And this is definitely how every kid aspired to be. Like, this was just a cool thing where he's like, don't worry, mom, I've got it covered. And he lifts up the bread box handle and he's got the Twinkies in there. Like, that's such a cool 90s young boy thing to do. And I feel like between Kevin McAllister from Home Alone, Bart Simpson, and Dennis the Menace and the live action Dennis the Menace movie, it was a good time to be a young kid, like a young boy, because you just had these iconic male troublemaker slacker characters. It was so cool. Like I always just thought these kids, and even if you look at We're Back, a dinosaur story, which is one I would love to do a retrospective on, um, that was the same thing. Like they were just cool kids with sideways or backwards hats, or just that kind of attitude. And this scene just gave me those vibes immediately. Um, so he flips up the bread box, and after telling his mom that he's going to be in bed early and he won't watch any scary movies, he promises her. Of course, what does he do? He ends up watching scary movies, and he ends up eating Twinkies with whipped cream on top of them, literally the most unhealthy, the most you couldn't have done the exact opposite of your mom anymore. And I'm going to ask you folks a question really quick because I'm curious about the comments. Um, was there ever a time that your parents, like, they would leave you home alone when you were a kid and they said, "All right, don't don't do this. Like, don't have ice cream. Don't do this." And then you did it like immediately after. I want to know, I'm just totally curious. I'll keep going with the retrospective, but I'm going to come back and I want to check because seeing that Twinkie scene just brought me back to those days. Like when you would be so excited, like, oh my gosh, the family's gone and I get to do whatever I want. So let me know if that was you at all. I'm going to keep going, but I will circle back around to that. So he does start to watch a scary movie, but the TV starts to go in and out, and he hears something on the roof. So he goes outside and sees something large has made its way through the forest. And in this scene, he's shining from the roof. He sees the TV antenna is broken, and a bite has been taken out of the tractor. The fence is broken, and he sees it's leading towards the woods. So he straps up, gets his BB gun, a light on the end of it, a flashlight in his helmet, and he thinks what he's finding or what he's going to go find is the creature from Mars or the being from Mars. And once he goes out in the forest, he eventually comes upon the giant, the giant. I'm going to call him the giant for you folks. Um, he comes across the giant who goes to the electrical tower and he grabs and starts to eat the metal, which was always curious to me because, okay, he's a metal robot or an iron robot, but it's sort of strange because I'm assuming that the metal he chooses is similar to what he's made up from, at least just because they call him, the Iron Giant. So it's just kind of weird to me that he's eating something that he's possibly made out of. That always struck me as sort of odd in this scene that he eats sort of the same thing. I guess maybe you can, you know, the equivalent would be humans eating meat like beef or pork or chicken or fish, but it always just felt like, iron on iron. There's sort of something cannibalistic about it. But he does see the robot eating the metal and then accidentally shocks himself. So he reaches after that for those circular transformers in the middle, and he shocks himself and he spins and he goes into the electrical power lines. And this always like was kind of freaky, like especially looking at it now, it's very traumatic. I think there's something specifically um about seeing cartoon characters get electrocuted in not funny ways because you don't often see cartoon characters drown. The one I can think of um, is Help, I'm a Fish, another movie I'd like to do a video on, maybe a full actual retrospective for the channel. But when the guy at the end, if you've never seen it, I'll give it away. I'm sorry, but at the end he says I won't give it away. I won't give it away because maybe we'll do a retrospective on that. But anyway, seeing like so you don't see characters drown too much, and if they do, there's nothing really there. There's no blood. There's no hits. You don't really see many on fire occasionally, but normally when they meet their demise, like you can see in The Prince and the Frog, um, the bad guy at the end was dragged away into the Shadow Realm. Beauty and the Beast, Gaston, he falls off the edge of the Beast's castle, or it was the rooftop of some sort. And so you don't see a lot of electrocution, which makes sense. But this is pretty graphic. I mean, obviously he doesn't have skin, so he's just getting electrocuted. But look at that face; it's pretty dark. Let's see here. Jeanette, put that on your channel. You will get demonetized. True. Definitely true. Um, Unripe the Burby. I forgot about the Twinkies. Oh, that's such a great scene. I should have taken a screenshot of that because I love that scene. I mean, whipped cream on Twinkies. That is a kid's dream. Maybe one day we'll do that. We'll just eat food from cartoons. We'll do the Twinkie with whipped cream on it. Joey Baseball, Twinkies and Mad Magazine didn't pay for product placement in the movie. They were just things Brad Bird wanted in the movie because he liked him in his childhood. And that's actually really sweet. Like, look, I get product placement, but if you're just putting it in as fan service to yourself, that's good with me. I'm all for it. I want my slaw. Honestly, no. I was a very lame kid. I followed all the rules and obeyed my parents. Slaw, you weren't a lame kid. Not to your parents, at least. I'm sure that was great. But hey, you know, being obedient, being a good kid, nothing wrong with that. You saves you from a lot of saves you from a lot of heartache. Let's see here. Unripe the Burby. I didn't. I was a good kid, but I did ask for it when they came back. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. I like that I'm starting to learn a little bit about you folks here. Enjoy baseball. Even the depiction of the BB probably isn't something they would do if they made the movie today. Yeah, no, it would probably be a squirt gun. It would probably be a squirt gun. I totally agree. I want my slaw. Um, the scene when he gets electrocuted, probably the most pivotal scene in the entire movie because it's the first time he ever sees a human as good. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we don't really know what his interaction with humanity is at this point. I think this is, if I remember just right off the top of my head, this is the first interaction with somebody, and yeah, I mean, if he hadn't been saved by Hogarth, he might not have made it. He might have just ended. His life could have been cut short, or he might have seen this as an attack and he might have started destroying humanity on his own. So yeah, it is definitely a pivotal scene. Um, Unripe the Burby. I hope you get the mic cover. I appreciate that. And I will maybe hopefully make enough from this month because everything I make from the channel just from getting views, it's not a lot by any means, but I do get at the end of the month a couple dollars, and I put that always towards reinvesting in the channel. So if I don't get it today, not a problem. I will use whatever I get the mic cover for next month, and hopefully you'll hear it in the video for February, or not hear it, as we're hoping. Yeah, Hogarth acts quickly as he sees the robot getting electrocuted and turns it off by flipping. This was always hilarious to me too. I love that there's just this big on-off switch right on the transformer. I'm just calling it an electrical transformer, or tower, whatever you want to say. But there's just a big on-off switch that's so funny to me. But okay, he doesn't end up destroying the transformer or anything. He just switches it to off, which is so convenient. Um, and the robot, the giant seemingly falls unconscious. And as Hogarth investigates, it wakes back up. And Hogarth ends up running away back into his mom's arms. And of course, when he tells her what he saw, she thinks he's trying to get out of the TV instead of being broken. And then they go home. And you could see that he does get kind of sad because she doesn't believe him. She goes, you know, honey, not right now. Or, I don't want to talk about this right now, and he's sad, but you kind of you kind of understand where she's coming from. And as a kid, we've all been there where your parents just, or whoever, doesn't want to listen to you because either you're a kid or you've cried wolf too many times. And it is a sad feeling. You definitely feel for him because he's telling the truth, but you also feel like it's justified because you've seen his behavior already with the squirrel. You've heard about it with the raccoon. You saw him disobeying his mom. So it does a really good job progressing into, you feel bad for him because you know the truth as the viewer, but you can sympathize and empathize with his mom because you know that he's probably not going to be totally honest every single time. And the story of a giant robot, I mean, come on. That sounds ludicrous to anybody. Um, So the next day at school, the kids argue over what's been going on in town, and in the background, there's an instructional video of what's going to happen or how to protect yourself during a atomic fallout. And it's so funny because it's the most lighthearted joke you can make about this subject, and it's a totally lethal outcome in the Cold War. With the Cold War going on at the time, everybody's afraid of nuclear war, and I respect it because it's so funny and it actually made it into the movie, which again, I understand, you have to understand the times that they were in. And in the 90s, that was something you could joke about. And I just can't imagine any kind of war being joked about between people nowadays in movies. And there's a funny scene where they're telling you to hide under your desk if a bomb ever comes. And I'm sure many people had to see those videos um, growing up. So a lot of people saw those videos, and You remember these when they say hide under your desk? And it's funny because it blows up and there's a whole crater underneath her, but the desk and her are still intact. That's pretty much the thinking that you went through. Um, and just let you folks know, it is 5:36 right now. We were supposed to go 4 to 5:30. I'm so sorry that we didn't. But if you don't mind, I'm gonna keep going. I want to finish the movie, and I'm sure you folks do too. That's what you came for. So we're just gonna keep going, right on going. And I'm gonna read some comments right now. Um, Jeanette, I want my slot. I was the same kind of kid. It was just a lot less complicated that way. Yeah. Sometimes, and like we said, it's the mystery. You'll get in trouble, but you don't know how. And sometimes the mystery of that is enough to keep you from doing anything bad. Joey Baseball, the thing is today, Hogarth would just pop out his iPhone and post giant all over TikTok. Yep. Yep. And then, well, if the giant hasn't already appeared in Fortnite, I'm sure he'd be flossing. He'd be a mega star by now. Jeanette, my mom was born in the 50s, and at school she said she had to sit through that kind of bomb video in the 60s. Yeah, and these were common. I remember seeing videos like these later on and they always say during an earthquake or during a tornado or a natural disaster, hide under your desk. And I mean, I don't remember the desks being reinforced with any sort of bulletproof, shelter-proof titanium steel, but apparently that's what you're supposed to do. I mean, I guess it's better than saying there's nothing you can do, so hide under the desk. I want my slaw. The teacher is played by iconic comedian Cloris Leachman. Yes, that's true. One of Brad Bird's favorite, and she had a much larger role, but it got cut down to one line, which was unfortunate. I know. And Cloris Leachman, which I believe she was also in The Last Unicorn. If I remember correctly, Angela Lansbury was the witch, and Cloris Leachman was in it too. I just can't remember which character she was right off the top of my head, but I do believe she was in it, if I'm remembering correctly. Um, so later at the diner, we see Hogarth's mom, who is actually named Annie, who we don't find out her name for quite a while, which is sort of surprising. And Dean getting acquainted, getting friendly, before he's called out to take a look at the destroyed tractor and take it to his junkyard. And of course, they're saying, take a bite out of it. Angela Zaplatinsky, hello there. Yeah, Zaplatinsky. Wow, I'm surprised I pronounced that. Hello from Canada. Hello from It's the Goose, It's the Goose. Thank you for joining us here. Um, we're just talking Iron Giant, so pop in anytime you have anything, and we'll continue on. We'll go ahead and try and read his comments, as many comments as we can here. Um, yeah, so he's looking at it, and then remember he gets a big bite taken out of it. And so he ends up taking it to the junkyard, and one of the guys brags that, Earl right here in the middle, he says, I actually called the government. Like he's, bragging about it's such a big deal that he had to actually call the government for reinforcements. And he goes, Dean's like, who are they even going to send from the government to investigate this? And this is when we come to really a great, great, great quote unquote villain. Like the most non-villain villain I think that there could be in a movie. Kent Mansley. And Kent Mansley is a great character. So he is the government agent from the Bureau of Unexplained Phenomena. And I love the logo. How is this not a sticker? This is, I mean, if they really had advertised, if they really had advertised this movie more, I feel like this would have been a great decal. I think it's so funny, like they have little atomic symbol at the top. The, um, I'm sure it's referencing, the Cold War, the atom, nuclear war. But I also love that for any non-Americans, normally the eagle is holding an olive branch for peace and spears, but in this he's just holding question marks. I think that's really funny. That's a really cool sticker. Um, so yeah, so we have the bureau, and he expects to. So he's investigating around the power plant, and he's just making jokes about, oh my gosh, this little town, there nothing ever goes, nothing big ever happens here. Big things happen in big places, and this little town in Maine, there's nothing going on here. Uh, and so he gets Hogarth's gun. It just says HOG Hug, Hogarth Hughes. Just the first couple letters of his name because it's broken off at the end, as you can see. And and as he gets into his car to put it down on the seat, he finds that half his car has been taking a huge bite out of it. And just his response, oh, and he has a joke too, where he goes, he's like, oh yeah, nothing big ever happens in this town. The biggest thing here is, the biggest thing in this town is probably their beauty queen or their pageant queen, which, that's obviously a joke about her size, that she's probably a larger woman, and that's definitely a joke you could never make now, which is just sort of funny. Like, whether or not you like the joke or not, I'll be fine either way. But I do think it's funny that the joke was even made. Like, looking back at it now, is like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that they, not only, I don't want to say got away with it because it was a different time, but I'm like, I'm surprised to hear this joke in a movie that was released theatrically like this. It's just, again, such a totally different time. Um, and then so he ends up getting out to speak to one of the foremen, one of the forest workers, or one of the electricians, and he goes, "You're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe this. Take a look at my car." And he goes back out, and the car's totally gone. And so, this sort of starts the real investigating. And all he has to go off is Hogarth, who he doesn't know, and he doesn't know whose gun it is, but he has that little BB gun there. Um, so Hogarth ends up going back out into the forest, and he leaves some metal rods there, some metal cylinders or some piping, and he's got his camera, and he's looking for the Iron Giant, and he falls asleep, and he finally sees the metal rods are gone, or the metal pipes, and he comes back out. The Iron Giant is there, and it's so funny because what he does is going he's going to find it, and the second he finds it, he starts running away, right? He starts to being chased, and as he's about to get crushed by the giant ends up sitting by him, and he sort of mimics his seating too, like he has his legs folded up that way, and he throws Hogarth the on and off switch, and it shows that the giant recognizes that Hogarth saved him, and I'm going to go ahead and read a couple comments really quick. I want my slaw, or let's go ahead, Angela. Fun fact, this art style of the Iron Giant was going to be used for the canceled Kingdom Hearts TV show. Was it really? Wow, that would be amazing. Um, I'm not totally knowledgeable about Kingdom Hearts. I know a little bit about it, but wow, that would have been a great, a great art style for this. And just the art style in general, I was going to get to it later, but I love this. I think it looks fantastic. The colors are so bright. I mean, if you look at this shot just in particular, look at the reds, the oranges, the kind of mixed with browns, the stone in the back. It feels really texturized. It's really, really great. Even the 3D things that are there too, it all looks fantastic. So Iron Giant looks beautiful. I think it holds up. I think some of the 3D doesn't look, it has aged a little bit, but it doesn't look bad. So what I mean by that is it doesn't look like it was made today. You can tell like things are a little more cylindrical. They're a little more rounded. You can tell what's 3D, but it never does enough to really take away from how it looks. So I'm okay with it. Would I have liked to be animated like everything else in the movie? Sure, but it doesn't bother me. So I'm okay with it. Um, let's see here. Earl is so underrated. I want my slaw. Earl is so underrated. He's the entire reason Kent Mansley is in Rockwell. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And Angela, does eating metal turn it into fuel for the giant? We were talking about that earlier. I'm not 100% sure if I'm being completely honest. We were like, I thought it was like sort of cannibalistic. Like, why is this metal creature eating metal? But then I justified it. Maybe it's like us eating chicken. So who knows? I don't know. But Ringer goes, yeah, it's food. Um, so yeah, so we have the giant, and he's recognizing that Hogarth saved him, and so the giant starts to follow him home, and Hogarth is sort of at a loss. Like, where do I do? Where do I hide? A 600-pound gorilla, well, wherever he'll hide, right? So he follows him home, and Hogarth's trying to tell him, all right, you can come with me. We'll find a place for you to stay. But then the giant starts to get hungry, and he starts to eat train tracks. And this is bad because right after a train starts to come, and this is a really great scenario that's unexpected because, we never know, we never know when the train's going to come and he just gets hungry. He's acting instinctively because he's starving. And the train starts to come and we have to figure out what are these characters going to do in this situation? What is Hogarth going to do? Like, what's he going to, is he just going to tell him to run? Is the giant going to run? Is he going to destroy? What's he going to do? And Hogarth begins instructing him, like, they start to work together. He says, all right, we need to put the train tracks back together. So here we go. And he's instructing me. He's like, all right, push these together, pinch them together. We're going to do it like this. And I love seeing how delicate the giant is with it. He's really trying to put it together. Um, and he's like using his fingers to put everything together. But when the train starts to come closer, it actually gets pretty interesting because Hogarth just says, all right, it's close enough, let's go. But the giant has such an attention to detail that he ends up just staying long enough just so he can get everything right, just so the train will run again. You don't know if it's because he wants to save people, which I don't know if he knows that concept yet, or maybe he does after telling Hogarth. Um, but he ends up putting it there, and you think, oh man, this is going to be great. The giant's going to save everybody. He's a hero. But instead, the train hits him, and it's pretty surprising. It actually is. It actually is, a shock to see. Like you'd assume, okay, well, they got everything fixed, so everything's gonna go, be fine. The train's gonna go by, and they're gonna have learned to work together. But the giant actually gets hit, and he smashes into a middle, a lot of pieces, and the train ends up going off the track. Luckily, everybody seems to be okay in there. But the giant then, as you see at the top of his head, his antenna comes out, and all his body parts start to reassemble. They start to come back to him, which is pretty cool. Like you don't see a lot of that happen. Like the other thing I can think of is when oh, man, Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas, her hand is trying to work around the doctor and that kind of walks back to her. That's the only time I can think of when body parts sort of reassemble on themselves or they're somewhat sentient apart from their creator. So it's kind of cool to see here. It just reminded me of Nightmare Before Christmas. Um, but he starts to get put back together and the giant has to hide. So Hogarth goes home because if he doesn't go home, his mom's going to start to worry and start doing that yelling thing that she loves to do so much in his words. Um, and oh, there we go. Sorry about that. So while he's going home, Kent Mansley is in the mayor's office and he's discussing, the things that have been seen. And they get a call about the train that had crashed into some big creature. And so he decides to take somebody's car and go over there. And this is great. So Hogarth is at home with his mom, her back to the kitchen, and she asks him to say grace, and as he's doing it, the giant's hand is in the kitchen. It's trying to find its way home, but it's acting kind of like a dog and it's kind of exploring the kitchen. And Hogarth is begging and pleading. He's trying to like make it so she doesn't look behind and he's saying grace, right? So he's saying grace and he's being very animated so she doesn't look behind him. So um he's like trying to provide this distraction and he'll go like the giant's finger will be going into the pot and he'll go no 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 devil, don't come near us devil, we want to be good. And the mom is obviously bewildered by this, but he ends up ushering the hand into the living room and she's doing things and it's like a back and forth, will she discover anything, he's just trying to hide the hand. And I love this part because it also shows Hogarth isn't a bad kid. I mean, he does some rambunctious things, but he's not a bad kid. But sometimes bad things happen, it feels like, just because of who he is. So as he's trying to get the hand out of the door and outside, he decides to throw a marble just to make a sound or just to, like, distract her to turn his mom's head. And when he does, he throws it and he hits the spice rack and it falls completely. It destroys the whole thing. As you can see, it fell off the wall onto the stove, and I believe it actually falls onto the ground. And it's just kind of funny because no matter, even when he's trying to do something good, he can't help but end up destroying something. And we'll go to read a few of the we'll read a few of these comments right here really quick. Um, Jeanette, I grew up with tons of tracks around me and constant trains. To borrow a modern phrase, it be like that. Could be a 5 minute wait, could be 20. Yep. If there's train tracks, you never know when one's going to come. I want my slaw. Giant also doesn't seem to comprehend danger or what can potentially be dangerous. That's true, and that does come back around later with the deer scene that we'll get to. Um, Unripe the Birdie. Train crashes are so sad. They are sad, but luckily it only seemed like there was one or two few people on there, and so everybody was safe. So we can be happy for the cartoon people. Um, Joey Baseball. I think Giant doesn't perceive danger because he can always fix himself. That's why I don't think he would die when he was electrocuted. Yeah, and at this point, he still doesn't comprehend the idea of death. We'll see later in the scenes that him and Hogarth have a discussion about that. So yeah, I talked about this in the last unicorn thing. When do you become human? Is it, when you're a certain age, or sorry, when you become an adult? Or I guess in this case, it would be when does the giant sort of become human? Is it when you realize that death is a thing, when you can comprehend death? It definitely changes you. So maybe it's that. Um, Angela, we need more fans because it bombed so much at the box office. Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it earlier, Angela. It Warner Brothers animation was getting shut down, and so they had to rush it, and there wasn't enough budget to properly promote it. But thankfully, it's found a huge fan base now, and it's pretty great. It's pretty great how much people have responded to the Iron Giant, and it's sort of a cult thing. But I feel like, man, they've re-released it a couple times, and one of these days it's really going to hit and really going to resonate on a larger scale, I think. So, just as he's ushering the hand out the door, Kent Mansley shows up, and he's at eye level with Hogarth, and his mom walks up, and then he just like looks at her like from the waist up, and he's just it's an unwelcoming liking that he takes to Hogarth's mom on first sight. And Happy New Year, Angela. Hopefully you'll join us for the next one. Um, so he ends up getting on the phone and he tries to convince his superior of what he saw, and he's laughed at, like straight up laughed at. And you get the feeling that this bravado, because the way that um, Ken's personality is, he like feels that he's too good for wherever he's at. Like when he's with normal people, he exudes this sense of self-importance that what he's doing is the most important thing. Like he's part of this bureau that, national security depends on him. But then when he speaks to people in his own industry, like when he speaks to other government people, they have no respect for him. So when he tells about the giant, he doesn't say it outright, but he goes, there's something over here. There's something that we need to be careful about. And the government agent, the general, he asks what it is, and he goes, "Well, I don't know. It's like a giant metal creature, but I've got a feeling." And the general laughs at him. He just straight up laughs at him, and he goes, "You know what? You've got a feeling. If you had given me a footprint, we could see something, or we could send somebody over. If you had any kind of proof, a picture, but with nothing, then you're just a crackpot, basically." And yeah, and he's just so frustrated, and it's really this like this incompetence, this feeling of inadequacy in his own world, where he's, to everyone else he's top dog. He's this important guy because he can get the government on the phone at any minute, but in the government, he feels like the lowest in the totem pole. So you kind of feel bad because he's not really a bad guy, I don't think. Like in this movie, he's the quote unquote villain because he really wants to find out the giant. He wants to destroy it, as we'll find out later. Sorry for spoiling it if this is your first time with the movie, but he's not really a bad guy because you can kind of see where he's coming from, and we'll get to his motivations later. Um, so they end up hearing a sound, and Hogarth runs upstairs. Right, he runs upstairs to the bathroom, and he sees the robot playing with toilet paper like it's a kitten. And it's funny because so Hogarth ends up trying to go into the bathroom, to push the robot hand out of the window. And what ends up happening is that he closed the door behind him, and his mom and Kent are outside. And one of the best lines, definitely Kent's best line, is when he goes, they hear Hogarth, um they hear him grunting, and they hear him, trying to get the robot hand outside, but they just hear him grunting. And so Kent goes, uh see, this is why it's so important to chew your food. And that's just a great line. I love that line. I think that's hilarious personally. um so he eventually ends up getting the oh, let's take a look here. Joey Baseball. I kind of take offense to people saying Kent is a villain. He's certainly an antagonist, but he believes he's doing the right thing. He only appears bad in the military scene. And that's exactly right. That's, yeah, as I was saying. And I don't think he's a bad guy because he does have national security's best interest at heart. Like, he wants to protect the US, and these were heightened times between the US and Russia, or the Soviet Union at the time. So that's a great way to put it. He's not the villain, but he's the antagonist. So he's trying to destroy the robot. Um, so afterwards, Hogarth takes some comic books to the giant, and they're reading them, and he sees Superman, and immediately uh, the giant takes a liking to Superman, and he identifies with him. He wants to be Superman. And they afterwards show a comic with it was a Tomo, and he's this bad guy, and they show the metal monster, and the monster kind of looks like him on the cover, the Iron Giant. He gets kind of sad, and um it's sort of a sad scene because he's got conflicting feelings. Like, he sees Superman, the person he wants to be, but then he sees a version of himself portrayed that's very similar, portrayed in this horrible, scary way. And he's, the way he's seen people sort of look at him, at least initially, with the sailor, and just the way he's talked about, you get the feeling that he's got this sort of internal battle going on. Like, who am I? Am I really this bad being, this bad alien or robot that they say I am, or am I a hero? Can I be Superman? And that's sort of what ends up being the lesson of the movie. And we'll get to that more though when we see what Dean says. So the two venture out into the night, and they're looking for food, for metal, for the giant, and they come across a car that the giant's going to eat, but Dean comes to tow it, and they have to hide. And so this is great. You can see the robot saluting and holding a burger. That's um, just a really funny visual, and it works. It works. And Dean ends up driving to his junkyard, and they follow after it because, hey, scrap metal, that's perfect for the giant. He can eat it, as much of it as he wants to. Um, and Dean, they're going there, and this is one of my other favorite parts, when the giant's starting to eat, and he starts to try to eat a car, but the car alarm goes off in his hand, and the giant is he's trying to, Hogarth is saying turn it off, or knock it off, and the giant, he's doing his best, and he just starts smashing it in his palm with his fist. I love that. That's really funny to me too. This movie has some, like, really good humor, but it's all very situational. So I talked about in a retrospective a long time ago about, you know it's sort of this thing between, you have the lines that the characters say, or you have comedy that is built into the character. So, like, you can write a really good line, and you kind of have to shoehorn it into, what the character's doing, and it doesn't always work. It feels like this is just a really good line, but then you have, okay, well, this is the character's personality, and this is why it's funny, because this is what they would do in this situation. And that's exactly how I feel here. Like, this is the giant's response to it. He doesn't know what to do, so his first instinct is, okay, I have to make this quiet. Let me just smash it until it is. So I like that it's very the giant in this instance. So yeah, he smashes it, and Dean, who lives on site, invites Hogarth in, and he has no idea about the giant's existence at all. And when Hogarth complains, he ends up giving him an espresso. If you see the tiny cups, he ends up giving him an espresso, and he is listening to Hogarth, who's hyped up on coffee for the first time, talk about school and how it's not fair and he doesn't like to be there and what they're trying to make him do. And he gives him a really great, simple piece of advice that we started to see with the Superman comic, where Dean says, you are who you choose to be. And that's what we end up seeing from the giant. The giant is this creature who is just learning what it means to be alive, essentially. I mean, all he knew originally was just eating and pain from the electrocution, and then he sees Superman. He meets Hogarth, who had saved him and showed him kindness, and he's starting to, I guess, become a little more human in that way. And as we'll see later, he's conflicted about what should he do. But you are who you choose to be. That's a great line, and a really great message for this movie, especially coming from a little kid and then a giant 60-foot robot. So they go outside, and the giant ends up chasing them, and he thinks Dean is a bad guy, and he's about to destroy him, but Hogarth tells him, no, we like him, don't hurt him. And they spare Dean, and through some persuasion, where here he goes, hey, do you mind if the giant stays the night at the scrapyard? Dean pours out his espresso, walks back, and shuts the door. And then 37 minutes later, and I say that because it actually has a black title card where it says 37 minutes later, Hogarth is outside saying, please let him stay, please. And he finally convinces him. So I want to ask you guys really quick too, because we've gotten to this point where we've seen a lot of actually most of the main cast, pretty much all the main cast, and I want to know who your favorite character is. So is it Hogarth? Because Hogarth is just so much fun. He's this kid who has a really big heart, even though he's also got a really big penchant for getting himself into trouble. Dean, really cool, understanding adult. He's definitely um, somebody who I would just like to see more of. Like, he's just a really interesting guy, especially when you have him opposed to Kent Mansley. They're just on opposite ends. It really shows the height of that 50s panic for the Cold War, and then what would transition into the 60s sort of summer of love, more lightheartedness. Or is it Annie's mom? She's a great character too. She doesn't get a lot of screen time up to this point, but she really is responsible. But you can tell that she's stressed out with work and she just really wants to enjoy her life and her son. So let me know what you folks think about who's your favorite character, or is it the giant? Who he's really cool too. He's got a great design, and it's interesting to see a character learn. And this is one of the best examples, I think, of a character learning in any animated movie, because you know what he's capable of, but I don't even think he knows what he's capable of. So for him to be able to wield this power, but also have to learn how to balance it, or even fighting with himself on what to do with it, it's a really good character arc. So let me know who your favorite character is. I definitely want to know. So Hogarth ends up sneaking back into his room to discover the room they had for rent was taken by none other than Kent Mansley, who is who's onto Hogarth because he discovers the gun HOG Hogarth Hughes belonged to Hogarth, and that the giant is somewhere, and Hogarth knows where it is. And this goes into a montage where Kent is constantly asking about the robot, and he's everywhere. So like when he's eating cereal, he's asking, "Hey, tell me about the robot. How big is the robot?" And then he'll close the refrigerator. Hogarth will, and Kent will be behind eating a sandwich. Hey, what does the robot look like? Just everywhere. Going to the bathroom, he'll pop out of the toilet essentially and be like, "Hey, why don't you tell me where the robot is?" He's just pestering him. He knows he's on to him, and it's a fun montage. But they end up Hogarth has to go, and Kent offers to give him a ride, and they end up going to an ice cream parlor. And it seems like it's a heartwarming moment enough, and not an ice cream parlor, but a ice cream counter. And Hogarth offers to make him his specialty, just this little like chocolate shavings inside the milkshake. But what is revealed to us, and not Kent, unfortunately for him, is that he ends up putting in laxatives. And it's such a funny like it's just out of nowhere, but it's a really good idea, and you can see where it goes, but you don't know when it's going to hit. That's the fun part about this scene, and the not so fun part about laxatives. You never know when they're going to hit. Oh boy, there's another pillow in case anybody wants that merch. Um, so they end up talking about, Kent ends up bringing up about the robot, why it's so important that he knows. And he really brings up some points that, as Joey Baseball said earlier, he's not the villain, he's the antagonist. And he says, we don't know where this robot's from. We don't know what these intentions are. Was it built by the Chinese, the Martians, the Canadians? I don't care. What I'm going to do, what I'm here for, is to destroy it before it destroys us. And it really does say a lot about, not only the character and the Cold War at the time. I mean, it certainly does, but it says a lot about humanity as a whole that, it's something that we fear. We'd rather shoot first, ask questions later. And this isn't to be on either side of any kind of political thing, but it really is like a mindset that I think is almost instinctive, built into people, from caveman times where it's, um, if you're afraid of it, you know, get rid of it first, then find out what it is. That way, if it happens again, then you can approach it with kindness. You can approach it with understanding. But it's it makes sense though. It makes sense, especially in the situation, because with those tensions heightened, you have no idea what it could be. So it could have been anything, and you actually get to see. I mean, it's done in a scary way because he's yelling at a child, and even when he's even here, like you can see, he looks big. He fills up a lot of the screen, and his finger is always pointing. When he yells at somebody, you saw it on the phone when he was with the general. His finger is right pointing at the phone. His finger here is right at Hogarth, and he almost he's so composed for most of the movie and his on-screen time that when he loses it, he's actually pretty frightening. He doesn't threaten to, have anybody destroyed to this point or anything out of the ordinary, but you feel like he could. You feel like he'd be willing to do anything to accomplish his mission. And sometimes that determination or that tenacity, again, it's the whole mystery. You don't know what he'll do, but whatever he does, he wouldn't blink at it. Let's take a look here at some of these things. Joy Baseball. Let's see here. Sorry, Joey Baseball. Dean was who I wanted to be. He just oozed coolness to me. Harry Connick Jr. played him so amazingly well. Yeah, and I think it's kind of that almost less is more sort of vibe. Like I feel like Dean could have been this wildly outlandish hipster, and he could have just been this poetry finger snapping beatnik who was just too cool for school. But it was really one of those things where I think it was really positive. Just make him sort of this quieter figure, like this almost less is more kind of guy. And you liked him because he didn't say as much, because he wasn't out in the open. Like even the response to when Hogarth asked him, "Can you take the giant?" He didn't say, "Oh no, this is crazy. This is too much." He did a little bit protest, but at the end, he's like, "You know what? Fine, whatever. I can't even deal with this." So yeah, Dean was a really cool character. I want my slot. I related to Hogarth as a kid. Me too, definitely as a kid. He was, even though his ears are huge, even though all their ears are huge, um, yeah, he was just like the cool kid, and you always felt like, man, I wish I could have that adventure with a giant. I wish I could go on these, just everything. He was living the life that every kid at that time wanted. Unripe the Burbie. I don't know if I have a favorite. Oh yeah, that was stressful. I'm assuming this scene right here makes you wonder what Kent went through. Yeah, and I mean, if you want to talk about prequels, I would love to see a Kent prequel. That'd be cool because I want to see how the Bureau of Unexplained Phenomena got started. That'd be fun to see, and just how he got so, I don't want to say not jaded, but it's almost whatever the opposite of jaded was, how it became so serious. Like what I imagine in my own head canon is that he was so um prodded, like he was so almost gaslit into believing like, all right, we're gonna what we're gonna do is we're gonna stick this guy, he's way too intense for us. We're gonna just give him his own department. We're gonna give him his own thing. because he's so intense and we don't like working with him. So we'll have him as the lone guy on the Unexplained Phenomena Bureau. And then, he was looking for Bigfoot or whatever, and like, oh, it's very important. It's top secret from the president himself or the, CIA director. And he just ended up going on these crazy adventures, like kind of like the X-Files, but if instead of it being real, they were all just like fake or these blown out of proportion stories. And he ended up finding out later. And so now that he has this that's real, he's just so intent on having people believe him that he's willing to do anything. So that's my pitch for the Kent Mansley spinoff, which I didn't expect, but here we are. Um, yeah, so just as he's letting loose, um, that's when the laxative kicks in, and he runs to the bathroom. And it's really funny because he's like, I'm going to get these answers out of you in just a minute. Stay there. And of course, Hogarth doesn't stay there, and he returns to the junkyard, um, where he's putting together art, and it's actually a pretty cute scene. I don't know why. It's just sort of heartwarming to see him, like, he's making this big art, but it almost looks like a mobile, like when you have it over a baby's crib, and it totally fits for the giant. Uh, and so they end up going away from the scrapyard, and they go to the lake, and they're gonna just hang out at the lake all day. Dean's gonna read his newspaper, and this is an iconic scene. Like, this is the one I always remember seeing commercials for, where they're hanging out, and Hogarth jumps in. He does a cannonball, and he's saying, "Come on, Dean, come in." And he goes, "No way." And then he tells the robot to come in, the giant, and the giant walks away. And he goes, "Oh, come on, you're a chicken. You better." And then you just hear the steps, boom, 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 booming steps, and you see the giant jump in, shouting "Cannonball," and the explosion is so big that it looks like a nuclear explosion went off in the water, and this huge wave comes, and Dean does a great thing where he sees this and he just lifts up the newspaper back. He's like, "Yep, I'm just waiting for the inevitable." And it ends up washing him out into the street where he's still sitting in there, which is pretty funny. And then you see the giant look over, and Hogarth is in the tree, and he's like, "That was awesome." Like, that was a scene I remember just, I'd say that's probably one of the most iconic scenes in the whole movie, at least from an advertising perspective. I remember this one being all over TV. I'm pretty sure it's this one I remember anyway. I Want My Slaw. Shooter McGavin does a great job as Kent. He's great. I mean, I'm excited to see him in Happy Gilmore too, but he's fantastic in this. He really is an underrated actor too, but one of those guys like Jennifer Aniston needs to be in more animated stuff because he's too good not to be. Um, so we see back at Hogarth's house, that Ken, after doing some investigating, finds Hogarth's camera that he left at the scene of where he fed him the metal pipes before, and he develops a picture, and he finally sees the giant in there. He finally sees it, and this is the proof he needs, unfortunately. And as that's happening, the giant and Hogarth, who he's carrying, meet a deer. And the deer is so sweet and it's so cute. And it sniffs his hand, but it hears a crack, go off in the woods, and it walks away. And man, this is probably the saddest deer scene since Bambi did it in the 40s or 50s. And as it walks away, they hear a gun go off. And they look around, and they see these two hunters, and they run away from the giant. They see it, and the giant reaches down, and the deer is dead, and it's been shot by hunters, and it's just unexpected. It's unexpected to see this beautiful moment that the giant has with this deer, this living creature, and he's reaching down, and it's dead, and it asks why. He asks why to Hogarth, and Hogarth explains, the gun is what killed the deer. And a scary scene happens where it almost goes into like a trance, where it sees the gun and it sees death, and its eyes and its eyes just go red. And Hogarth is like, "Hey, what's going on? Snap out of it." And the robot does, but it's definitely an ominous sign, like just of things to come. Like maybe that the pain it had was so extreme that it overrode its normal personality, which is really a really great way to explain it. Like if you had to explain how sadness feels, it's hard to say to explain the pain of seeing a loved one or somebody or anything die, but you can really physically see it here, like in the way you can't always with people, because people hide their emotions or they all deal with grief differently. You get a physical manifestation here where you see the robot laser in, and you see his eyes just turn a different shade of red. So it's a really powerful scene, even though it's brief. It's a really good one though. um And later on, we see, the giant. I love the eyes too. The eyes on the giant are so expressive because his mouth doesn't move, it flaps open, but you really have to do all the emoting with the eyes. And so to see, what would be eyelids and underneath the eyes and the color of the eyes are so good. And the way it flashes off Hogarth here, especially, man, they did a really great job being able to convey the giant's expressions and emotions. But the giant's still thinking about the deer, and Hogarth says something. He goes, "It's not your fault. Things die. It's part of life. It's bad to kill, but not bad to die." And that's a really, just on its own, before the giant even says anything. Like, that's a really powerful statement. Like, things die. Okay, we've got that. It's bad to kill, but not to die. And when you hear something like that, I don't know about you, but for me, even in my head, just watching this, it makes you not afraid of something like death, like where it's okay. Like, killing isn't good, but dying is okay. And that's a really peaceful thought to have. And that's a really great, whoever wrote that line specifically, that was um that was a really nice sentiment. And I think it was a really great way of framing it for the giant. And the giant ends up asking if he'll die. And Hogarth's response is sort of this logic where you can see it, like it's maybe it's like a philosophical leap, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's something as simple as that. He goes, well, you're made of metal, so he's not human, but you have feelings, and things with feelings have souls, and things with souls don't die. Now, of course, we're not going to get into the minutia of religion here, but we're just going to say, for the sake of this movie, with this logic, we're going to go with the soul argument. That's a really interesting thing. Like, okay, so it's always that question, like, it would a robot with a human brain have a soul, or can it go to heaven or the afterlife or wherever? And in this case, he goes, since you have feelings, you have a soul, and since you have a soul, you'll um you have a soul, so you won't die, maybe in the physical sense, but not in the spiritual or ethereal sense. And it's just something that you don't really see. Like, it's not the crux of the movie, it's not the main message or um the main focal point of the film, but it's something that is just explained, and it's like it's explained in a way where it's, hey, this is how it is, this is just the way life is. And even though I don't have the answers, maybe this will bring you peace. And I want to know what you folks think about that, about this scene. This was probably my favorite moment of the film, just because of how soft it is, how quiet it is. And there's some really great ones, especially coming up. But I think this might be my favorite because of how I always like seeing how they deal with death and how they explain death to characters in cartoons. And this is a really great one. This is something simple, and it makes you feel not afraid. So I think it's a really great scene. But I want to know what you folks think about this scene in particular. And I'll come back to them. We'll circle around if you guys have responses, but we'll continue on here. Oh, okay. Well, let me go ahead and get the other part of the rest of it. See, that was the technical difficulty I was having a little bit ago, but we're gonna go ahead and get that on. So yeah, if you guys want to put in the what you think about what Hogarth said, while I get this one all fixed right here. One moment. Yeah, that was definitely my favorite scene though. I don't know about favorite scene of all time, in here, but it was a really meaningful scene here. All right, here we go. One moment, folks. Sorry about the wait. Hold on. Okay. One of these days, we're going to get everything right here. I promise. Including this, so. Okay. Let me take a look, folks. Sorry about this. Just having. Remember those wonderful technical difficulties we were talking about? Yep, here we are. Okay, one moment. Let me get this fixed. Give me 1 second, everybody. We're going to get that fixed right away for you. Okay. And I want to see what you folks are saying here. Will I get this fixed? The deer was meant to be Bambi's mom, Slaw. Man, that is quite a. Well, I think it was a buck, so technically it couldn't have been Bambi's mom. I think that would have been Bambi's dad, if anything. Uh, let's see. Joey Baseball. Hogarth was really the adult when explaining Death to the Giant. Yeah, and I mean, I said it in that video previously that it really, it can make you an adult to know what death is. So I don't know if anybody agrees with that, but I feel like that is something that can be true, and I do think he is an adult in this case. Sorry, I'm trying to get the full screen again here. I want to be able to do that for you folks, but for some reason it's not popping up the way it's supposed to here. Let's see here. I don't want to have you guys look at everything going on in the background here. Let's see, Joey Baseball, especially considering that Hogarth was getting over the death of his father at the time, who was in the military. Yeah, and that's exceptionally true too. Yeah, and he had to deal with that, and it was something that really came back in almost a full circle way. And I really like how they did that, how they were able to, take death and make it something that really that they really made it something that um was important to convey, because I feel like they could have easily just been like, oh, death is bad, but killing is bad, killing is wrong, which of course would have been justified to say in this movie, but at the same time that it it wasn't. I think that would have been an easier way to go about it. um and I'm glad that they didn't take that. I'm glad they didn't just do that right away. um that they didn't just go that not simple way, but in a way, I'm glad they didn't just take that and run with it. Sorry about that. I'm still trying to get this up for you folks. We'll see if I can get the last couple slides here. Sorry about that. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. So we're gonna have to just go like this. I apologize, but the full screen for some reason isn't working, but I think that it's gonna be okay. So we'll go ahead and sally forth. So, man, sorry about that, folks. We've almost had a couple hours without technical difficulties. Well, almost 1 hour. Uh, so yeah, the next one here we have is the robot's dream, which I don't know if you folks remember this. I think it was in one of the later cuts, but I decided to include it in this one just because it was such a scary part. So the robot ends up having a dream, and he dreams about the deer being killed again. And when the deer is killed, he has this dream about all the other robots coming to Earth. I'm assuming it's Earth, and just destroying everything. And the robots take over. And the scariest part, though, of this, of course, it's horrible to see all these, places in ruins. But the worst part is when he sees his own reflection, and he sees himself as this, creature with these tendrils, these, animatronic tendrils coming out, and his eyes reflected in the water. And he ends up waking up from it. And it's this really scary scene it's really good, but it's, it kind of makes you worry, like, is something coming out of him? Has this unleashed something in him? Because this is the first time, or one of the first times, we've seen the red eyes come out in a way that is aggressive. So, you don't know what's coming on yet. But Joey Baseball, the movie made that point because this movie was made right after Brad. Brad's sister was shot and killed by his brother-in-law. Yikes, that is scary. That's no good. Um, so so the next is this really, really unexpected interrogation scene with Kent interrogating Hogarth, and he's trying to find out where the giant is, and he ends up um, threatening Hogarth by saying, we'll take you away from your mom. We'll make sure you never see her again. It's going to be really hard to raise a kid as a single mother, let alone not being able to have the kid. And so Hogarth ends up telling him it's at the scrapyard. And Kent, I've never seen this in a kids movie. And if you have, let me know the movie because I want to watch it. Kent says, "Don't worry, this is all just a dream, or it's a bad dream." And he puts what I'm pretty sure is chloroform over over Hogarth's mouth, and he passes out. I have never seen that in a kids movie. That is the wildest thing I've ever seen in my life. So they end up going to the junkyard, and Annie is there with Hogarth and the government. He got the government on the phone. Kent did, to come down, and this is it. This is, he's like, "Oh, where's the metal man?" And I want my slaw. There's no way you could put the drunken kids in a movie today. 100% agree. If there is, though, let me know. Seriously. And yeah, Kent is wild. Kent is wild. I mean, we were just talking about how he's not the villain, he's the antagonist. He's the antagonist still, but that's some pretty villainistic stuff he did right there. But, so Kent is saying that, we're going to show you, and he ends up showing him the giant, but he dresses it up like it's a huge art project, and it's so elaborate, like you would still be like, okay, I want to check this out, but it's so funny because he's like, here it is, and he's telling one of the generals, um I've been working on it for a while, and if you want to put a bid on it, competitive bid, it's all yours. And Kent is just reamed by the general. It's such a great, funny scene where he's just saying, come, you know, tomorrow you're coming back to Washington, DC, you're cleaning out your office, you're done. And it just makes Kent look like a total fool. And I honestly I understand there's um, a really amazing, ending to this. But if this was a short movie, I think that'd be the perfect ending. I really do. I guess it's so funny. It's such a great, like, kind of heartwarming scene where he comes through in the end. Like, Hogarth has no expectations about it. He doesn't know what's going to happen, but Dean really comes through in the clutch right there, and I love that about him. So, um, so they end up playing later, and Hogarth and the giant, he goes, "All right, I'm gonna be this villain. Who do you want to be?" And he gets this big S, and he goes, "Superman." Like, he really idolizes Superman in a cute way, and that's when things sort of get out of hand, unfortunately, because he points the toy gun at him, at the giant, and Hogarth has no idea, but he's triggered by the gun. It really gets to him, and he locks in on him, and just seeing the gun just totally warps his mind, and he ends up shooting a giant laser towards Hogarth, which Dean rescues him from. And Dean yells at him. He tries to explain in this moment of rage that the giant is a weapon. It doesn't have feelings. It's not this thing that can feel. And the way the giant is pleading, he's like, "No, I'm not a weapon. I'm not this. I'm not, please, no." And he tries to apologize, but Dean is rightfully protecting the kid, but it ends up making the giant run away, and he just doesn't care at that point. He's so hurt and he's so downtrodden that he doesn't even think. He's just running out, and he runs towards the town where these two kids are um, hanging from a rooftop, and they're about to fall. And as they do fall, the giant is there to save them. And and as Ken's driving away, the whole town is looking at this giant, and Ken sees him in the rear view, and he's validated that he's not totally, out of his mind, and so he ends up starting to drive back, and it's this really great moment when Hogarth comes back and he tells him, "I'm not a gun." And that's sort of the thing that had been talked about, where you get to choose who you want to be. And it's a really great, another sweet moment. Like, this movie is loaded up for a movie about a robot. It has so much humanity and so much heart to it that, we talked about earlier that if you'd want to see a sequel, if it has this kind of heart, I definitely want to see it. Lowell Lucas Jr., even if it was the 50s, there's many excuses folks would use to justify their paranoia, and there were a lot of them for the Cold War. Dean is the best. He's a kid at heart, but knows the rules of adulting. He certainly does. That's why him and Hogarth are able to relate so well to each other, because they're both kind of kids at heart, especially Hogarth being an actual kid, but Dean has that young coolness about him. Like, he's able to relate to Hogarth, but he's also able to be that influence on him. Like, he's got that life and that age experience, and he's just a really great role model. And he's different from Annie's mom, but they're really cool. He's a really great character. So, everybody sees the robot and things are going good. They see that the robot saved the kids, and Hogarth is trying to just tell them, it's okay. The robot's all right. He's good. Um, until the army comes. And this is where the problems arise once again. And they're shooting at the giant, despite a child being there, despite a child being in his hands. And it's really depressing to see. And they aren't even listening. It's what we were talking about earlier: shoot first, ask questions later. And he ends up running down the street. Um, he ends up running down the street, um, trying to escape them and trying to protect Hogarth too, who's in his arms, who's in his hands. And he's doing his best to run out and avoid everybody. But there's only so much he can do. Um, so he runs out of town and he avoids a bus. There's a school bus coming, and he jumps over it, and he slides off a mountaintop or a cliffside, and you worry he's done. You worry him and Hogarth are meeting their end, but he ends up having jets in the bottom of his shoes, and he ends up flying. And Hogarth is, he doesn't know how to fly. He's kind of just standing on his jets. And Hogarth tells him, like Superman. And he ends up putting his fist in the air and flying. And it's a really satisfying moment where you can see, um, that he's living out his dream. That whole thing about choosing who you want to be, he's doing it right now. In this moment, he's Superman. But then, of course, the army comes, and they have fighter jets, and they're shooting at him. And the giant is still putting his hand over to protect Hogarth. And he's still trying to protect Hogarth. And he ends up crashing. And, man, things get worse. He crashes out of the air. And Hogarth is, at this point, for the giant, everything he knows, that Hogarth is dead because he's not responding when he touches him. And the giant just loses it at this point. And it's the same whimpering. Like, it's amazing how much, the giant can talk. He has limited phrasing, but it's the more guttural, animalistic um, sounds that you can't control that come out of him that really make him feel like he is alive, for lack of a better term, because he's alive in the way that you can experience feelings. And, maybe that means he's human in a way, or maybe it means he's more than a robot, or somewhere in between, but he's human enough to be hurt. And that hurt plays out in a scary way, because he starts destroying the town and destroying the army, and he is on a rampage. And this is a terrifying, if you want to go from a character who looks instantly likable and cute to a character who is terrifying, the giant is one of them. He has one of the quickest turnarounds I've ever seen, and it is scary. But he ends up, trying to destroy the town. And look at this. He literally has just His arm, one of his arms is a gun, one of his arms is a claw, and then he has lights and he has lasers and his head is protected and he has a huge cannon in the middle. I mean, there is nothing here that is going to protect humanity. Like if the giant is on this rampage, you're done. And he even starts to get everything beamed up, ready. His eyes, even the clouds behind him are ominously red, and until Hogarth comes. And look at this. It's just Hogarth, the kid he loves, and he's just standing there pointing the cannon at him. He's so blinded by rage and blinded by hurt. And if you want to see another thing like this that's similar, go see Sonic the Hedgehog 3. That's sort of a similar Shadow the Hedgehog. He's in that same boat. So if you like that story, you might like this. You might enjoy, or if you like this, you might enjoy that. Lowell Lucas Jr., when the giant goes sci-fi, he's not just terrifying, he's literally War of the Worlds. Exactly. I mean, this is a character who is so dangerous and so, I mean, the fact that the world is so lucky Hogarth saved him and showed him kindness, because if the army got to him first, there might not be a world left. I want my slaw. The scream Vin Diesel made when the giant finds out Hogarth died was absolutely breathtaking, or at least he thinks Hogarth died. Yeah, and those sounds, like I said, the whimpering and just the primal the primal sounds he makes of hurt and anguish and pain, it's just it just speaks to you more than any words in any language can ever do justice for, which is pretty impressive to think about. But the Kent, he you know, everybody sees that the giant is going to harm him. He ends up standing down, and even the army's general, he says it like, it's okay. We don't need to do this. We don't need to fire. And Kent is so out of his mind that he ends up taking it upon himself to launch this nuclear missile. I don't know if it's nuclear, but he launches a missile and it goes up into the sky. And this thing is going to destroy everybody. He's just so out of his mind that he wants, he thinks that everybody's gone soft and he desperately wants to destroy this robot for, at this point, he says it's for national security. But I think at this point, it is not even about that. I think it's just about himself, that he wants to be taken seriously, that he wants to be proven right, that he wants people to listen to him. And talk about blinded by rage. He's blinded by rage in this situation too, when he launches the missile. And so with that, the giant, he flies up. He decides to sacrifice himself. And he flies up and he says, in his head, he hears Hogarth and he says, who do you want to be? You get to choose who you want to be. And the giant says, Superman. And he makes contact with the missile, and this huge light blows up. And man, what a scene here when they just watch the giant sacrifice. Hogarth can't even look. And the giant just explodes in this magnificent explosion that just totally eviscerates him. And it's done. And all Hogarth has left of him is a screw. And there's a statue built with Hogarth in it as well. And it's really a nice statue, and they end up, remembering, memorializing the giant. But one day, the screw that was from the giant, it starts tapping at the window, traveling, and the blue light going off just like in the beginning. And Lowell Lucas Jr. friggin' Kent needs to be put on scrap duty to feed the giant. Yeah, I don't think he's gonna be getting that promotion after this. But the screw taps at the window and it starts to roll out. And that means that the giant is still alive. And that excites Hogarth. And you don't know when, you don't know how far or where until it shows, I believe it's in Greenland or New Zealand, the giant's head. And everything is making its way back. Making its way back there to the giant. And you see that he's alive. And, you're hopeful that he's going to see Hogarth again. And I'm sorry that the ending might have felt a little rushed, but like I said, technical difficulties. But that's the Iron Giant. One of really probably the greatest, you can say one of the greatest animated movies of the 20th century. I'd say it's a classic. Well, what do you think? Do you folks think it is one of the best animated features ever? Or do you think it's just like deservedly just a cult classic? Or do you think it's appropriately remembered where it is? because I'm not sure. Um, I'm not sure where I read. I mean, I think it's a great movie. I think it's wonderful. Does it stack up against movies like The Lion King? Does it is it like a tier and a C tier, D tier? I think it's definitely on the upper end of animation, but I don't know what people think about it. I know people have it as their favorite movie, but from an objective point, where do you folks see it as? Let's see here. Jeanette, also the sweet small shot showing Dean and Annie together. Just adorable. Yes, that is a great shot. They do get together in the end. I'm sorry I overlooked that. Though Lucas Jr., some folks say they didn't like the ending and felt the giant sacrifice wasn't as impactful. I totally disagree. Yeah, I don't know about that either. And even if the giant was just memorialized, I think that would be a great ending in itself. If he didn't have this. And I'm assuming that you're meaning the ending where he comes back to life. I like them both though, because if he's memorialized, it means he did something great. He was, a real hero. He got to learn about humanity. He chose his destiny, and that was to sacrifice himself for humanity. But also, I like this because it is hopeful and it does make you smile. Like I don't know anybody who saw this and didn't have a smile on their face. I can see if you'd like the other ending better, but I don't see how you can dislike this ending. Um, Joey Baseball for Brad Bird's first movie ever, he hit a grand slam. I 100% agree. I 100% agree. And whether or not people love this movie, it definitely deserves more recognition. Jeanette, awesome film. I think it's easily S tier because of the dialogue and the consistent animation. Yeah, agree. Beautifully animated movie. I can't say enough about that. I Want My Slaw. Oh wait, Lowell Lucas Jr. There's a lot of heart and it's definitely above B tier. Its story is A tier. I agree. I think there's a lot of things it does, like, let's just say Aladdin, which I think for me is probably my favorite, or I can say objectively the best Disney movie. That's my opinion. I understand people would say Lion King or Beauty and the Beast, whatever movie you want to say. Um, I feel like this is just, that one I feel like is more wonderment, but this movie feels like it's a small movie, but it has really big heart. Like it is about a small town. It does feel like it's a small story about small people in a small town, but it elevates everything. Everything feels big because of how small the town is and how small the characters are and how ordinary they are. And it feels special because of that. So where the other, Aladdin had the genie and the musical numbers, and this, I mean, this you could argue feels a little bigger than that because of how contained it is and how much it makes with, I don't want to say the realism, but how what it does with less. Like you're not getting those scenes of the genie cracking jokes really, and you're not getting these numbers where Prince Ali is riding through town, and I love those and they're great. But I kind of like this because it's smaller things, like he's showing him doing a cannonball. Hogarth does a cannonball, and then the giant jumps in and does a cannonball right after, and it's this huge mess. And there's something kind of charming about that, where it doesn't have to be these huge scenes. It's just these things that kind of happen in life. Um, let's take a look here. I Want My Slaw. Dean kind of played the father figure Hogarth didn't have, so it only makes sense he becomes a stepfather. And yeah, and that's, I'm glad, like, it doesn't need to show their progression, but it is kind of nice to see at the end that they did end up together. Lowell Lucas Jr., I say it's a rogue hit, like a Don Bluth movie. Brad Bird's one of the greats, and I'm glad this movie exists because it propelled him to do his other movies. And, I'm pretty sure he won an Oscar, I think, for Ratatouille or The Incredibles or Incredibles 2 or something, but, I would say if you had to choose the best one, I could see this one being your favorite Brad Bird movie. Aladdin was great, but I feel like this Jeanette Robin carried a lot of that film versus the original plot. They went with this one. The whole cast is truly the whole film. Yeah, and I mean that's not to say anything about bad about Aladdin or Disney movies. It's just they're very different movies. Like those movies feel like they have to be these grand spectacles, and this one feels like it doesn't have to be. Like it can just be a real story. It feels more like a story rather than a show. And by show, I don't mean like an animated series show. I mean a show that like a show, like a big show, like a big work of art. And that's okay. There's two different, ways to go, and this just went the other way, and I'm really glad it did. I'm glad it exists for that reason. Joey Baseball, The Iron Giant was originally meant to be a musical and entirely CGI. That changed. Thank goodness, because I'm glad this wasn't a musical. CGI, I don't know how it would have looked. Probably not as great. I mean, I like some of the CGI in this, it works okay, but I'm glad it wasn't a musical. Jeanette, huge Don Bluth fan here. Yeah. And I did one for Banjo the Woodpile Cat, his very first directorial debut away from Disney. Lowell Lucas Jr., I'm glad this film's getting the love it deserves. Well, it's because of you folks. I'm just here streaming about it. And I mean, folks, that's the end of the movie. I mean, so I guess we're gonna go ahead, and if you have any last comments, go ahead and leave them here. I'll read them off. We'll go till about 6:50. Just I want to know what you folks, I kind of asked you what your thoughts are. We asked, we talked a lot about, which is really fun, sequels, prequels for the Iron Giant. If you missed it, you can always go back. I'm gonna try and splice these video retrospectives, um, so we can kind of, if you ever want to go over them, or if anybody else wants to watch them, they can. Um, but Yeah, so I want to know just any kind of last thoughts on the Iron Giant, or anything else, any kind of last 5 minutes you have to say. Jeanette, Lowell, if you like Fern Gully, definitely check out Goose's review on Fern Gully. It's awesome. Thank you, Jeanette. Yeah, and Fern Gully is one of my favorites. That's one of my favorite videos. It definitely is a little bloated because that was one that I had worked on for a couple months, just as far as writing and definitely editing at the time, and I could have probably gotten it down about 10 minutes, but it felt like everything there needed to be discussed. And I spent a lot of time on the history, maybe a little bit too much, but that was a fun one. I don't really look back on any of the videos with fondness because of I think that at the time they're not really that great, and especially looking at them, but it was a fun one to do, and I really like that movie, so I'm happy with it in that case. Um, let's see here. Lowell Lucas Jr. Well, thank you for the stream. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the last unicorn video, by the way. Would you consider watching The Hobbit? Yeah, I definitely would. Yeah, last unicorn, that was a fun one. I've been really enjoying seeing the response. A lot of people liking, some of the takes I had, or some of the things I pointed out, and a lot of people actually not liking it, which is great. I don't want anybody to think that if you have a differing opinion than me, that I don't appreciate it. I actually like that because it makes me think about things in a way that I haven't before. And in The Last Unicorn in particular, one of the points I made was that I'm not a big fan of the unicorn as a character, or at least as a human version, because of how arrogant she is. And I say that in a way, and I say that because I feel like she is arrogant, but it's because there's no reason for her to learn any other behavior. She's revered by humans. She's revered by everyone, and you kind of don't really get an explanation why. She kind of says, we've been around since the beginning of time. We're these mythical beasts, legendary creatures. So I feel like she knows her place in the world, and that sort of gives her a license to act that way. Like she knows that she's this mythical creature, and that maybe she should be appreciated as such. And she never really lets up on that, even when she does turn human. She sort of makes fun of Schmendrick. Or not even makes fun. She's like angry at him for, he's this clown for the King Haggard now, and I don't even want to work with him until Molly says, he's doing this for you. And she doesn't ever really seem. I'm getting off on a rant now, but anyway, I like that people have other takes. 'Cause it made me think, well, okay, is this how the unicorn is? And yeah, so I really enjoy just seeing all the reactions to it. Let's see here. Yeah, would you consider watching The Hobbit? Absolutely. Yeah. I think that, The Last Unicorn, I'm probably going to lay off Rankin Bass for a while unless we do a live video retrospective here. Um, but yeah, it's definitely on the list. I Want My Slaw. Do you think they should have used a made-up superhero instead of Superman? They didn't have to license Superman because it was a WB movie. I was thinking about that. It does sort of make it feel like, um, I do like a universe in which everything is original in it. And that includes like the Superman. Like I remember seeing that and I remembered, yeah, that one like it's a little jarring to see a real character in that, and in that way it's good because you don't have to explain building lore. Like you don't have to build that in universe lore, like explain, oh, this is, Captain Hero and he can fly and he does this and he's very selfless. You don't have to do that. The audience goes in with that sort of built-in knowledge of Superman, but it also kind of takes you out of it, like saying, okay, this is a pre-existing property and it's in this new property, and that's the only thing. So if they could have done it without, I don't want to say making it corny, um, then yes, but I don't mind that it was Superman because it's such a, it's not the biggest problem I would have with the film in any regard. Jeanette, I think Rankin Bass would go well on this channel. I love nearly all of their stuff. Also, I think the book for the Last Unicorn would explain things a lot better. Yeah, and I specifically didn't um, touch on the book at all because I didn't want it to impact how I explained the movie or I went about the movie, because I know that there would be a lot of things that were different, and I didn't want it to become, well, this isn't, the way the book is. Like if I like the book better, then I wouldn't want to say, well, this is how the book did it, and if the movie did it this way, because I think the movie, even if it is based on a property, it's going to be out there for people who haven't read the book to watch, and so it sort of has to um, live and die on its own. And so things that could have been explained, like, let's just say the unicorns, whatever, the unicorn's attitude, we'll say, um, then, yeah, then if it's different, if it says in the book, well, okay, it's because of this, and then I can say, well, it's justified, but you just don't see it in the movie. And that's one way to go about it. But I'm trying to go about it in a way where you don't see the unicorns. Like you just have to go off of what the movie says. And in the movie, it just says she's been around since the beginning of time. Doesn't give a reason. That could be your attitude. That could be all the unicorns' attitude. But that's kind of the way I just went about it with respect to that. Lowell Lucas Jr. Hey, Jeanette. I did. Goose's Ferngully video was awesome and was my very first video I watched from him. Wow, really? Absolutely loved it. Also, thanks for giving us time to love the Iron Giant again. That's awesome. I didn't know that was your first video. Yeah, I still working on it. Still working on getting things still working on getting things fixed up here. If you didn't, we went super long today. We're supposed to be done at 5:30, but we went an hour and a half late because, of course, technical difficulties. But I'm getting them fixed. Next time is going to be perfect, a smooth show. So we're going to make sure next time is going to get fixed. Yay! And Jeanette, his Princess and Goblin is fabulous too. Thank you. I had a really good time doing that. That was a really fun one. So that one came out pretty decent. But it's like all art. Like, not saying that what I did is art, but it's like anything that's artistic or creatively minded. It's always breathing. So anytime you finish it, it's never over, and you're like, man, I should have included this. I should have included that. Especially with the last unicorn. There was probably about 5 to 7 minutes of stuff I cut out, but I can't be having 80-minute videos every 3 weeks. Um, let's see here. Jeanette, Goose is getting a fan base. One of these days, I hope he does Coraline. I would love his take on that. You know what? Okay, well, thank you. I don't know if I'm getting a fan base, but I do appreciate it. I always have the mindset like I don't have fans. There's just people out there who like the same cartoons as I do, and I really believe that. And you folks are definitely a testament to that. So thank you again for coming out. But actually, Coraline is on the list. I've never seen Coraline, and that's one I've always wanted to see. I love the dark cartoons, so that one would be a live video retrospective. That's on the list, and it's a short list. Joy Baseball, do you have all your videos for 2025 planned already? I do, but they're always subject to change because sometimes, life gets in the way of being able to watch a um, 60 episode series. Like I'll tell you folks, one I want to do. I really want to do Tasmania, but I want to say it's about 60 episodes. And it's tough to watch 60 episodes when you have to watch a movie and write everything, and you have to do the editing script for the editor and put everything together for them. And so I want to do something like Tasmania. If I did, that'd be towards the end of the year, but I do have 2025 planned already. For those of you who weren't here, or just didn't hear it, I want to do. I'm ahead for 1 month right now. Marsupilami is going to be coming out January 19th. That one is a really interesting video. It's got some. It's the series that I talked about is interesting enough, but it's really the before and after, especially the after. That's really cool. So it's not a super long video, but it's a good one. It's a fun one. But as for 2025, I do want to get ahead. So I'm currently working on the video for February, which is a bizarre one. That one is very strange. And I'm hoping to get ahead enough where I can start taking requests, like, you know, via donations, so I can start doing videos in between. And not all retrospectives, also just kind of commentary on animation and cartoons and reboots and sequels and prequels and remakes and everything in between, um, controversial things, not controversial things, but like how we were talking about, um, like, talking about alcohol in a cartoon, things like that. So, um, lots I want to do. So that's the answer. I do have them planned. They're always subject to change in case something big comes or just time runs out. Jeanette also agreed the book is much better, or is better, and as much as I love The Last Unicorn, it was rough with plot and character. Yeah, and for me, a lot of it was the pacing as well. Um, Yeah, so a lot of it was pacing. And we'll go ahead and we'll start getting the comments cut off really quick, um, to make sure we get out of here at 7 o'clock. Um, Lowell Lucas Jr., by the way, Alex Hirsch hated the unicorn, and that's why he made the unicorn an unlikable jerk in Gravity Falls. Oh, I didn't know that. That totally explains it, though. Uh, Joey Baseball, I remember you saying this time last year you had all the video topics for 2024 already planned out in December 2023. Yes, I do have them planned out. We'll see if I can stick to that schedule. It changes. Like last year, it changed a lot, but I did do a majority of the videos. So I think I have, what is it? I do one every 3 weeks. So I want to say about 14, 15 videos, main videos planned for the year. So I want to do that. And then I want to have, you know, donation requested videos, and then I want to have just videos in between. So I would love, absolutely love if I could get, and this is an ambitious number. I would love to get, we'll just say 20, but I have to get the main ones done first, and then I can go in between. But yeah, so that's the answer. Um, uh, let's see here. Jeanette, I'm laughing way too hard at all of that with the unicorn. Her arrogance makes that so appropriate. I mean, that was a big thing. Like I've been reading a lot of comments and people are saying, hey, the unicorn has a reason to, be sort of not mean, but the unicorn has a reason to cry. Because I was saying, why is the unicorn crying? Because she shouldn't be crying because, Schmendrick helped her. And it wasn't that. And I said, like, I can understand a tree being a tree. I can understand why the unicorn is being like this, but it still doesn't make her a likable figure. So I think people might have not, might have maybe overlooked that or not taken that, because that was actually a really big point that I wanted to make. Like, and I'm definitely know that I didn't do a good job explaining it as I wanted to. But yeah, the unicorn, I would probably say is one of the least likable characters in a likable movie and that you root for. Like, you want her to be saved and you want the unicorns to be saved. But man, that is a character, like, thank goodness Schmendrick was there to carry the movie as far as liking her, because other than that, I don't know. That's a tough one. Um, let's see. Lowell Lucas Jr. It's hilarious if you can check out the commentary on the last Mabelcorn episode. Oh, okay. I'll have to do that. I normally don't watch anything before or after, just because, like, before I don't want to be influenced by anybody else, and after I just don't want to hear anything else about the movie or series I just watched. But I also wanted to do one more thing with you folks, and this will of course come next time or maybe the time after. Um, when I do one of these live video retrospectives, I also would like to do it with a special guest. So I want to get back into interviews. I keep emailing people and sending people messages. People just don't get back. I don't know if it's because they're busy. I'm sure it is. I don't take it personally. But it's hard to get people to agree to do interviews and agree to do, and I'm going to be a little more aggressive in it now. Um, but if you know somebody that you would like to see appear on the channel for a live video retrospective or an interview, let me know, but also let them know. Like, send them an email or an Instagram message or comment or a YouTube comment, because that's how I got Jet McPlane, and I still have to splice that interview together. That's how we got the In My Head podcast, which is one of my favorites. I'm still putting that together. So let me know, and more importantly, let them know because it's really fun to do interviews, and I'd love to do a live video retrospective with a somebody who's either really passionate or a creator or a animator. So let me know, but we'll go ahead and wrap up right now. Loa Lucas Jr., thanks again, Goose. Take care. I'm a fan, by the way. Love Blazing Dragons. Thank you. And I'm a fan of all you folks, and thank you for putting up with it. 2.5 hour stream. And I think it was supposed to be an hour and a half, so I'm sorry for keeping you all waiting, but that was so much fun. I love discussing cartoons with all you folks. And I mean, I'll go ahead and I think for sure in January we'll be doing this again. Um, and I'll put up a poll this time because you all gave me some really good some videos, and I'll do a poll for next time. I just want to do Iron Giant because that one's really fun, and I thought you guys would like it. But this is going to be the last live video retrospective for the year, and the next video that's going to be coming out is going to be Marsupilami for January 19th. Be ready for that. And I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your weekend. And I will be seeing you folks in the new year. Have a great